All right, we should be live. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome, welcome. All right, let's let people, let people filter in. We'll get some people started soon. Get some people up here soon. While you're streaming in, make sure to like the live. Like the live, subscribe, ring the bell, tap the screen if you're on TikTok. All sorts of things that you should be doing. Do you do political stuff too? Occasionally, yeah. Although currently there was a political win amongst the conservatives in Congress that the Trump's budget proposals for places like NASA and the NSF basically were completely canceled. All right, let's talk to Stifa.
Peace be upon you.
Stifa, how's it going?
I'm well.
Glad to hear it. Stifa, can you give me just a moment?
Yes.
Okay, Stifa, right, so do you believe in a god?
Absolutely.
Okay, and which one would that be, just so I don't make any bad assumptions?
A lot of them. Love, Yahweh, the Word.
Okay.
Bunch of them.
So look, I don't believe in a god. What would you say is the most compelling evidence or the best argument that you could offer me that might make me think that what you say is true?
That would depend on, have you ever been convinced of anything before?
Yeah.
Okie dokie. What were you convinced of?
I was convinced, sorry, one second. I was convinced that the universe's expansion or acceleration rate is not constant.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. I got a customer.
Okay, well, come back when you're done dealing with your customer. Just do your job. If you're at work, like do your job. All right, let's talk to Opium Guy. Opium Guy, how's it going?
Good, good. I was looking more into the topic. I'm like, so my question is like, okay, so we know that physics can only solve like it's not everything, but it's a great tool to, get to observe the world in a different lens. But like, how do you still explain the phenomenons that happen? I know like quantum physics can kind of dive into it, but like we know that it's not the end all be all and physics is forever evolving. Where do you think the stopping point to what we observe and the metaphysical claims that are being made, like when do you think we can connect those two?
I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you believe in a god?
Yeah.
Okay, which one?
I just believe that there is a God
Okay. Look,
of
so
some sort.
I don't know what the questions you were asking really meant, but the topic of conversation here, the prompt here is, can you convince me to believe in the God that you believe in? So what would you say is the best piece of evidence you have for the God that you believe in that might offer compelling evidence for me?
Consciousness, your experience.
What does that have to do with God?
Um, well, I think it's more so the claim that if you're able to experience consciousness, I don't think any type of physics can lead to that conclusion.
But what does that have to do with God?
It's a starting point for how consciousness arose from the material world.
God is a starting point for how consciousness arose from the material world?
Yeah.
So you think that consciousness arose from the material world?
No, they're two separate things.
But then why did you say that God explains how consciousness arose from the material world?
Well, the thing is, I think those are two separate things that combine into each other. So they play roles together.
So
But
why would I think that God has an explanatory role here?
because I think that when it comes to, because physics doesn't lead to any conclusion like that.
Okay, suppose physics doesn't lead to any conclusion like that. What does that have to do with God?
Well, I feel that for metaphysical claims, I think there's something outside of the material world that leads to our consciousness, and it
Suppose that's
can't be.
true. What does that have to do with God?
It's a starting point.
So you're just saying God is like a guess for how this might work?
No, it's a great conclusion.
Look, I just don't see how you're going from physics doesn't have an explanation for consciousness, therefore God exists.
Yeah, because
What's the
I think
connection? Those two things are not logically connected to each other.
I think it has to be like some type of truth within the consciousness that we have to stand for, and I think that would be God.
Why would, do you have any reason to think that it is God, or is it just kind of like a vibe?
It's more so of an intuitive
Okay, but it's not
perception.
particularly intuitive to me, so
Well, I don't think it's subjective. I think it's within everything, whether you think so or not.
you think your intuition is not subjective?
No, I don't think God is subjective.
Right, but I don't think that God exists. And your role here is to try to present me with an argument or evidence that
So what made you
might
come to
lead
that?
me to that conclusion.
What led you to not think that God exists?
Yeah, I just haven't heard any particularly good arguments. And I have heard some particularly good arguments for God not existing, at least like God as understood traditionally in the West.
Have you ever had any type of intuitive feeling that God may have potentially existed at one point?
No,
So you were forever just an atheist.
I don't remember ever believing in God, no.
So are you agnostic or are you just an atheist?
I would call myself an atheist because I don't believe in God. Agnosticism usually infers some degree of like wishy-washiness, fence-sitterness. I'm not really on the fence.
So how do you explain the phenomenon of consciousness though? Like I don't get where you would even
Look,
start.
so consciousness is not something I'm particularly interested in. It's not like my area of research. It's not like my area of research, my area of science. I generally just look at like what the neuroscientists say and the psychiatrists and the philosophers say. And it seems like it's at least plausible that like consciousness is a thing that happens in the human brain. It happens because of the human brain. I don't have a controlled explanation for how it happens. If you're asking me for a controlled explanation for how it happens, well, I'll ask you the same thing, and neither of us will have an answer.
Yeah, so therefore you'll be just agnostic. You wouldn't know.
I'm agnostic about the origins of consciousness, but I'm not agnostic about whether a God exists.
Well, I would say they're too close. I don't think you see the correlation between consciousness and God.
Well, you
That's where
haven't
the
provided a
disconnect.
connection between the two.
Well, I mean,
You just kind of asserted that there is one, but like what? Why should I like? what if I was just a panpsychist? I'm an atheist. I don't think that there's a God, but I think that every single particle has a degree of consciousness. Like, okay, then there's no issue explaining where consciousness comes from because everything has it. It's just a
Well, there's
fundamental
no
part of reality.
backbone. There's no backbone. The backbone is God
What do you mean
for
there's
that
no
conversation.
backbone?
So like with the panpsychists, I think you don't really have a backbone. You just think
I don't
that
know what that
consciousness
means.
is your. Well. The thing is, you need to have a backbone, especially with like metaphysical claims. You
What do
have
you
to
mean
have some type of.
backbone?
God is the backbone.
Okay, what do you mean by backbone?
I don't know how to explain. So like, it's more so the structure of how everything. So you think like it's a cause? Do you believe in like just everything is just cause and effect?
Generally, yeah.
Okay, so there has to be a point where it started. It just doesn't infinitely go on forever.
Why not?
I don't think there is a infinite because everything we experience is finite. I don't think there is.
Can you give me an
such thing.
example of something that didn't have a cause?
God.
An example of something that we both agree exists that didn't have a cause?
I would say, I wouldn't know.
Well, I mean, and that's fine because, you know, everything in our experience has a cause. So in fact, that gives us good reason to think that everything has a cause, which would just therefore trivially imply that there is an infinite chain of causes.
But how big is the universe though?
It's really big.
Yeah, so like for us to just say this window, this slither window of the universe is dictated between like all type of fundamentals when it comes to the whole universe will be
Yeah,
absurd
look,
to me.
I was just using the argument that you were using. You were saying that, like, you know, everything in our experience is finite. So I was just saying everything in our universe, everything in our experience has a cause. So if you're gonna make the claim that like our universe must be finite and therefore it has to like it can't be like an infinite chain of causes, then I'm just gonna make the claim that like our experience, everything has a cause. Therefore, you do have an infinite chain of causes.
No, but you don't include the backbone. I don't think that you understood that God doesn't have a cause. So like even
So
with our
I'm not
experience,
convinced that we need something like God to be an uncaused cause.
so you think we're just an infinite amount of just atoms colliding in this universe?
we are atoms. Like that is what makes up a person, a human, right? A planet, a galaxy. The way that you phrased it makes it seem like it's, you know, not meaningful or not worth anything, and I disagree with that connotation. But like, yeah, we are matter doing stuff.
So do you believe in there's some type of purpose within this universe?
I don't think that there's some divine purpose that's inspired by, you know, a divine being. I think that like we can assign purpose subjectively, no problem.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate it. Appreciate it talking.
All right. Well, thanks for being here.
Conversation.
Thanks for being here, Opium Guy. Okay. I mean, he was chill, if a little confused. All right, let's talk to Noah from either California or Canada.
Hello.
Noah, how's it going?
How's it going, man?
I'm doing all right. Noah, do you believe in a god?
I do.
And which one would that be? I just don't want to make any bad assumptions.
It would be Allah, like Islam.
Okay, cool. So look, I don't. But if it's true, I'd love to know. So could you offer me your best argument or your best piece of evidence that, you know, what you believe in is true?
Yeah, I could, but just to establish for this, could I just get like what do you like believe? Like where do you think everything came from, like for you?
When you say like everything came from, I'm not convinced that there was like ever nothing. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay. So like wouldn't you think that like the absurdness of hold on, I'm blanking. The absurdness of God like making us for whatever of his own reasons, wouldn't you consider that like an equal absurdness to there not being a God in the first place?
I don't think that it's absurd to think that there's not a God.
No, but like what I'm saying though is that like it's in the sense that there's like the anti-God argument that like why would God make anyone in the first place? Don't you think it's like they say that's like absurd, right? But don't you think there's like an equal
I'm not making that
absurdness?
argument.
No, but like what I'm saying is like so listen. Uh Okay, hold on. I'm trying to say this in the right way possible. So like, six, seven.
He was nervous. I get it. He was nervous. He was talking in front of, probably around 1,000 people. I understand being nervous. All right, let's read some super chats and we'll move on to our next guest. From Binary Ghosts with the $5, convince you to believe in my God, go outside and look up. That big bright disk in the sky, you know it as the sun, I know it as Ra. It's right there. You know what? Good point. But unfortunately, it's cloudy today. Get wrecked, Binary Ghosts. Your God got defeated by clouds. No, I'm kidding. And from Seabar with the $4, thank you so much, Seabar. All right, let's talk to Kaladi Knives. Kalodi Knives?
Yes, sir.
How's it going? Is it Kalodi? Is it Kaladi?
Kalodi, you got it right. Thank you.
All right, Kalodi, do you believe in a God?
Okay. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I don't really believe in a God. And I never really did. But as a little older I get, a little more like intrigued by the idea of their. I don't
You're cutting out.
that what people. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
I'm in
now.
the worst place to do this.
But for what it's worth, I am
I-
looking to talk to people who do believe in God. So if you don't believe in God, then
Okay,
there's probably
well,
not
I don't know.
much to talk about.
No, it's not that I don't. It's that I didn't, and I've always had this curiosity.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kalodi, the connection is just really, really bad.
I never went to church. Yeah.
All right, let's talk to Skooma. Skooma, how's it going? Skooma?
Hi there.
Howdy. Skooma, do you believe in
Hi,
God?
can you hear me?
I can.
I do.
Okay, and which one would that be, just so I don't make any bad assumptions?
Probably one you've never heard of before, or maybe have heard of once or twice.
Well, can you tell me who or what it is?
Yeah. So, the version of God I believe in is, here, I got a definition for it right here. It says, what is God? And the answer is, God is a supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things.
You think I've never
So-
heard that notion of God before?
Well, no, I'm not. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I mean
That's
pretty,
like what
pretty
most people say.
generic. Yeah, that's a pretty generic notion for sure. But to summarize it in my own words, I believe. Have you ever heard of spiritualism?
Yeah.
It started in France in the early 19th century.
Yep.
Talking to ghosts. So basically, it's the idea that every religion is right for its own reasons, and religion just is where you're born, and we all pray to the same higher power. It's just,
Okay.
we come up with our own.
And that's fine.
interpretation.
So why should I think that such a higher power exists?
Sure. So, I've watched your videos a lot, and I appreciate all the things that you do for this type of content, and this debate style. So, can I tell a story?
I would prefer you just tell me a reason, like a piece of evidence or an argument for why you think that this God exists.
I think the story would help.
If it's a personal story, I don't really care for it.
It's not. So you're very familiar with the Plato's allegory in the cave. Do you mind if I just give a quick summary of it for the audience?
I would prefer if you just give me the argument.
Okay. Well, I mean, if they don't know the story, then they're not going to really understand what I'm talking about.
Okay, but I will. So
yeah, that's her. So my point is I can come at you with pretty compelling evidence, compelling information, compelling whatever, and you're not going to take that step out of the cave. You're not going to take that leap like education until you decide that you're ready to make that initial step, that you're ready to say, okay, I'm ready to fully commit to this new idea, this new science, this new thing, and give myself. It's a personal journey that we all go on.
okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that you don't think that you can convince me because I'm not ready for it or whatever. So if the prompt is, can you convince me to believe in your God, why would you come up? If your answer is no, then why come up?
Yeah, that's I'm not gonna argue with that. I'm happy to share more information about my unique belief.
Well, I'd like you to present an argument or present evidence or something like that. If not, then we'll just move on to the next caller.
Sure. You said you don't care about personal, so I won't get into personal.
The thing about personal experiences is that, like, they're as meaningful as when somebody else tells you about their dream. Like, oh, your dream may have been meaningful to you, but like nobody else cares.
Exactly, totally. So two callers ago, you were talking to somebody, and you're using the argument of everything in the universe has a cause, right? And
seems that way.
Right. There's nothing without a cause.
Mm-hmm.
So couldn't you use that? And you were saying that everything has infinite causes. Well, couldn't you say that exact reason for an infinite intelligence, that there had to be a first cause, that there had to be something?
No, if everything has a cause, then by definition that rules out a first cause.
You're going to have to explain that. I don't understand.
Yeah, so if everything has a cause, then that would include what you think is the first cause, which means that it's not the first cause, there's a cause before it.
And then there's a cause before that.
Right, so then there's no single first cause.
But if I'm saying that my version of God is infinite, and you're saying the first causes are infinite, it's the same thing.
No, I'm not saying that first causes are infinite. What I'm saying is that it's at least plausible to think that everything that happens, finite or otherwise, is going to have something that caused it to happen. And then that means the direct implication of generalizing that statement globally is that there would be an infinite chain of causes going back eternally. Doesn't mean that any one cause is infinite or that there are infinite causes for a given thing.
I get the logic, but I don't see how the difference between infinite causes and, if I'm saying the supreme intelligence is infinite.
I'm not saying that there are infinite causes for anything. I'm saying that each thing has a cause. And so consequently, there are infinite causes for infinite things. Not like there's one cause that's infinite, but that each cause, that there are infinitely many causes.
Right, but if we're saying God is infinite in intelligence, in all things, in the creation of whatever, couldn't God create infinite causes?
Okay, then what's the cause of God?
I'm not saying the Big Bang. I'm saying an infinite chain reaction.
What's the cause of God?
Oh, I mean, that's that's beyond our comprehension.
Would you say that God has a cause?
I don't know, or don't really care, I guess.
Well, I mean, suffice it to say, if God has a cause, which, we're just granting for the sake of argument that everything has a cause. If God has a cause, then it's not like the ultimate thing. It's not the ultimate thing then if it has a cause, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's That's an interesting point.
Now, look, you don't have to accept that everything has a cause. The only reason I brought up that argument to the other guy is because he was saying from our observations, everything is finite. And I just made a parody of that argument, namely that from our observations, everything has a cause. It doesn't, like, you could argue, and perhaps even reasonably argue, that not everything has a cause. That's not, like, the reason why I don't think there's a God. I'm just saying that that is a reason why the argument the other guy was presenting is bad.
Yeah, I totally understand. I just was trying to show you that it could also be used in the other direction as well. But I see your point. Okay, well, what about this? So, what about the simple idea that all humans have this innate desire, this innate feeling that there is something beyond the veil?
Yeah, I mean, like, this is
1% of the world has a belief, but it's the majority of humans.
I mean, sure, it is the majority of humans, but that speaks to human biology, or perhaps human neurology. It doesn't necessarily point to the existence of something that drive or that desire points to. Now, you could say, well, why do we have that desire to begin with? And we could speculate on that. We could say, you know, like, having a desire for order, having a desire for understanding, these things are evolutionarily beneficial. And so
Absolutely.
we also have a tendency, perhaps an unrelated tendency, but we also have a tendency to anthropomorphize causes because it's evolutionarily beneficial. For example, if you hear a rustling in the bush, it's either wind or it's a tiger. And if you think it's wind and you don't run away, then you might get eaten. But if you think it's a tiger and it's wind, so you do run away, you don't get eaten. So perhaps a combination of this anthropomorphization of, you know, various natural causes combined with our desire for understanding and order, perhaps combining those two features gives us a tendency to think that there is a anthropomorphized order giver.
Yeah, no, I think you said it beautifully, that ancient beliefs all gave meaning to specific things, whether it's wind, rivers, whether there was a flood, God, a specific God was upset about something, right? So you're saying that humans are just passing down some version of a belief system. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that it's perhaps evolutionary, or perhaps the drive towards a belief in something greater than us is an accidental drive that results from non-accidental evolutionary adaptations.
Well, so here's an interesting anecdote to that. So I teach a little bit of, I used to teach ancient history, and some of the first big civilizations, like the first big seven, all developed their version of religion independently of one another around the same time, around all within about 5,000 years of each other. They all sort of developed their own religion. Now,
What?
wouldn't that be?
I don't think
so you're saying
that there's no way that's true, because we don't have any written records from before like 6,000 years ago, and so we can't say when these first religious beliefs formed prior to that time. And so if you're saying, if you're localizing it within like 5,000 years, that would, like, it's too wide of a range to be able to localize it, considering that we have only written records going back 6,000 years at most.
We have records older than 6,000 years.
They're not written records. I mean, there's like maybe some proto-writing from like 8,000 years ago in China, but we don't have like a genuine writing that goes back more than like, I think it's actually even like 5,500 years. I think like cuneiform is the first writing that we have. It's like 5,500 years old or something like this.
It's a little bit older. I can't give you an exact date off the top of my head, but my point is that China, Egypt, all of these places, Mesopotamia, all of these places, independently of one another, without knowing each other exists, came up with their version of religion.
Well, to be clear, they had a religion. It's not evident that they didn't have a religion and then they came up with one. It's just when the records started, which was 5,500, 6,000 years ago or so, they had religion.
Right.
But this doesn't say that they formed religion at the same time.
But
it's
I'm
just
saying
they started writing them down at the same time.
Yeah. But before that, it was hunter-gatherers, right? All separate tribes.
Well, not really. No, we like agricultural civilization has existed for over 10,000 years.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's just.
But the point I'm trying to get to is that these individual groups came up with religion by themselves. They didn't get an idea from another group.
Well, sure. I mean, belief in the supernatural could be far, far older than civilization, and it could also be almost intrinsic in the human body or in the human brain to believe in the supernatural. That's what I was getting at earlier. That it is common. It is we do know that there are certain parts of the brain that are that are particularly relevant in forming religious or supernatural beliefs. We have a plausibly evolutionary explanation for that. It doesn't the fact that people had these supernatural beliefs for a long time is not really evidence of anything in particular.
So you don't think that because, given that they started, I mean, we don't know when humankind or an evolution of early humans came up with these religions, but you don't think that that's interesting that they all came up with versions of religion?
Not really. I mean, okay, so it's perhaps interesting on a human psychology perspective that humans are, have this tendency to produce religious or superstitious beliefs. That's right. Interesting from a psychology perspective.
Right.
But I don't think that it says anything about the validity of these kinds of superstitious or religious beliefs.
Well, see, that's where we would differ. I think it does.
But how does that? How do you ground that position?
So, well, it kind of ties into my beliefs, because my beliefs are every religion is right for its own reasons, and that's why they're also different. But ultimately, they're all about the same thing, which is doing good for yourself and for others. So these basic religions, like you said, all start with coming up with a god because there was a thunderstorm, right? Or giving a god to the wind, the river, the sun, whatever, right? God was very physical, right? And then the next stage of God is God becomes, right? Those are gosh, I'm trying to blank. Polytheistic, right? Many gods, and then the Jewish community comes up with one God, right?
I mean, that wasn't the ancient Hebrews weren't the first. The ancient Hebrews weren't the first group to come up with this. We have Egypt. We have we have Zoroastrianism. These predate the ancient Hebrew religion. But yeah, sure.
The Jewish belief is what made it into what it is today. But you're right.
Well, I mean, not really. It was the Christians who did that, but sure.
I mean, they're. I mean, that's a topic for another time. They're tied at the hip. The Christians, the Hebrews,
and for what it's worth, also probably the Greeks heavily influenced the way that we think about monotheism these days.
Yeah, I mean, they're all prophets that are literally tied at the hip. But anyways, so my belief, my understanding is that as humanity progresses, we're understanding religion in a more complex way. We're giving meaning to religious ideas in a more complex way. And because of that, for my religion, science and religion is starting to blend together.
Look, so I'm still not sure what what's the argument here that you're offering? Like, what's the evidence or the, you know, the abductive reasoning, or the, like, what's the argument here?
Sure. So the argument is, well, you don't want anything personal, so I won't share anything personal.
Look, if your reason is personal, that's fine, and that might be a perfectly good reason for you to believe. It just won't be particularly compelling to me.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be personal. It's religion. But so you've heard of spiritualism, and it's this idea of talking to dead people, right? Talking through mediums to people that have died, right? I was very atheist and didn't believe in anything until I had experiences, which I won't share, but so there's have you ever heard of Alan Kardec?
The name rings a bell, but no.
Okay,
look, is there going to be like an argument coming soon, or like a piece of evidence or something?
Well, the evidence is that he's a professor from France in the early 1900s, and he gets approached by this person. He's a professor. I forget for what university in France, but and he is compelled with the things that he's seen, and he dedicates his life, and he gets thrown out of academia because of it. And
so the argument is that. So the argument is that some guy formed some religious beliefs or supernatural beliefs or something, and then he got thrown out. Like look, you, put yourself in my shoes. What kind of things could you say to me that might make me say, "Huh, that's a good point"?
Okay, well, so the point of my religion is it gives evidence to religion. You're talking to dead people.
Okay, so look, I'm not particularly convinced that talking to dead people is a thing that can actually happen. I'm sure if it happened to me, I'm sure I would be convinced. Do you have some reason I should think that that's a thing that happens, like, in the real world?
Well, you can look up. Well, first I would say look up Alan Kardec, called the Spirits book, and it's where he just talks to dead people and they give answers.
How do we tell that he was actually talking to dead people?
How do we tell he was actually talking to dead people? Well, I mean, that's the part where the internet's, it's not going to help. It's something you'd have to experience in person. I mean, you can do it over webcam and stuff, but it's not as powerful as it is seeing something in front of your face in person. But you can also look at, I'm sure you're familiar with near-death experiences.
Mm-hmm. I'm not particularly compelled by them. I've a lot of the near-death experiences that I've looked into are wildly either overblown or are just not true. So like those don't really do much for me. But like, look, suppose it's true that like the spirit exists. Suppose it's true that like there's an afterlife. What does this have to do with a god? When you're off the app, I can't hear you, by the way.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, there's so you're saying there's no correlation between an afterlife and God? You're saying like that can
look like
independently of one another?
Sure, why not? Like, it's, for example, like this is a thing that some branches of I want to say Buddhism believe it. Sorry, not Buddhism. Is it Shintoism? There are Eastern traditions that are traditionally like atheist, or they believe in spirits but they don't believe in like a creator being, and like there's just an afterlife. So like I don't see why it has to be the case that just because there's an afterlife or just because spirits exist that means that there's a god.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
So, like, suppose I just agreed with you and said, yeah, people can talk to the dead. People can talk to dead people. Okay, how does that get you to a belief in a creator?
Because the dead say that there's a God.
Okay, but so do living people, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's not bad actors.
I mean, like, look, if I don't see why being dead would make you all of a sudden have more access to like metaphysical like creator beings when like you're still just like a human. I mean, you're not like a living human anyway, but like presumably your conscious experience is, you know, it might be changed mildly, but like you're still fallible. You're still capable of forming biased beliefs while you're dead.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So, I mean, my beliefs are literally just what is in these books and what, quote unquote, dead people have said to the living. And they all say the same thing, which is that we live many, many lives, that we die, we go to this afterlife, and we learn about our mistakes, and we try to grow from those mistakes, and then maybe you might have to come back in the next life. And
this sounds like atheistic Buddhism, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty close to.
So then why do you need a god? I know Shintoism isn't a branch of Buddhism, by the way.
Simply because the dead say there is a God, and say.
Okay, but so do living people. Why does that mean that it's true?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't.
Okay. Look, I don't know where else to go from here, Skooma, so I'm going to let you go, but thank you for being here. Okay. Let's talk to Michael Wayne Goucher. Ah, dang it. I forgot to read some super chats. I'll read some super chats after this guest. I don't know why my mic keeps saturating. Michael, how's it going? Michael? Michael, how's it going? Michael? Michal? Michael? Michael? Okay, Michael's gone. Let me read some super chats and we'll bring on our next guest. From Dalknor GRW with the $5. Thank you so much. Dalknor says, I thought the universe was considered probabilistic, not deterministic. I'm not a physicist. I just thought underlying causes isn't the law. Look, so it depends on what you mean by cause. It can very well be true that the underlying universe is probabilistic if the Copenhagen interpretation or something like it is true regarding quantum mechanics. That just means that there wouldn't be sufficient causes for everything. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be a cause for everything. For example, you could say that like, we don't have a sufficient cause for, we don't have a sufficient cause for why the nucleus decayed at 12:01 p.m. But we do have a necessary cause that there existed an unstable nucleus at 12 o'clock and 59 seconds. That is a necessary cause in order for it to decay at 12:01. It just isn't fully explanatory. It's partially explanatory. From Echo Phoenix with the 2 Canuck bucks, beyond our comprehension, i.e. trust me, bro. That's generally how those things go. From Dwayne Warren with the $5, you can't gap to God. You need to make an argument that you need to make arguments that are continuous that point to your God. We all have a quote unquote God. It's the ground we leverage from. I don't quite know what you mean there. From Binary Ghosts, again with the $5, talking to dead people is easy. I've done it plenty of times. They don't really ever talk back, but hey, they are patient listeners. That's a fair and good point. It's the getting them to talk back that's hard. And from Grimmy with the $10, as someone who has had 3 near-death experiences, the argument that it's proof for a god is weak. Personally, it seems to be more your brain expressing what will bring you acceptance of your end. That's an interesting take. All right, let us bring up our next guest. Let's bring up Leo Ligar. Leo, how's it going?
I'm doing good.
Glad to hear it. Leo, do you believe in a god?
I do.
And which one would that be? Just to clarify.
I apologize. Let me I believe that there is a positive and a negative, and I believe that positive is what us humans are associating to be God.
Okay, look, do you believe that there is a being with a mind that created the universe?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think that such a thing exists? And by the way, when I say the universe, I don't just mean like space. I mean like the entirety of physical reality. But go ahead.
No, I understand. So I'm just gonna kind of start like very small. So you know how we're all like beings with consciousness, like even dogs, animals, cats, and bugs, everything.
Yeah, sure. Well, I don't think that everything has consciousness, so...
Not everything?
No, like I don't think a rock has consciousness.
Well, everything alive that moves.
I don't think a plant has consciousness.
Oh.
I don't think a bacteria has consciousness.
Okay, so like, but you do agree that they move around in their own sort of space?
Sure.
Okay, so in that sense, I believe in that own, like on the microscopic scale for like microbials and whatnot, I do believe they move around in such a way that I believe they exist in that way. I believe that they move like that.
Well, you don't have to I mean, okay, you can believe it. They do move on their own. I don't see what that has to do with consciousness, though.
I just have a feeling that anything that can truly think to be like either.
Well, that's the question. Can it think?
We don't know that, and so that science there is kind of unconfirmed. But
well, it's probably the case that like an amoeba can't think because it's a single cell, and like thinking is a thing that a whole bunch of neurons do when they're together.
Right, and so
a single cell it doesn't have a whole bunch of neurons.
So like are neurons even conscious?
I don't think that individual neurons are conscious. No.
Right.
So what's the argument for God?
So what I'm trying to say is anything that has any sort of consciousness is that like has any warmth around it, any sort of being of existence that can think, can do anything, can choose. I believe that if you use the science going down to what makes us be able to live and give off this energy of life and being able to just exist in general and the ability to have a conscious, I believe that all forms down to this radiation that we have that emits off of our body.
What radiation?
It's thermal radiation.
Okay, what does thermal radiation have to do with consciousness or God?
So thermal radiation is an energy, is it not?
It has energy.
So the energy in itself, what is energy?
It's a quantity that describes a system that's conserved if the system is unchanging in time, or rather if it has time translation symmetry.
It's
a number is what energy is.
Yeah. So does this energy always exist, or does it only exist whenever
it exists when there's stuff that has have well-defined energies?
So are these well-defined energies able to interact with life at all in any sort of way?
I imagine that we're probably talking past each other. Energy is not a thing that interacts, right? Energy is like a number that describes things. And one of those things that it can describe is it can describe like atoms or like atomic systems. It can describe like photons. It can describe a lot of things. But like I would say that the matter is the stuff that interacts, and then energy is just like a way of kind of bookkeeping or keeping track of how the interaction happens.
Okay, so in regards to just the matter aspect of energy, if you can kind of take into it's like a big picture here. So our sun gives off warmth. We give off warmth. We all have this warmth. And so I'm trying to show you, or at least like maybe this is like something you can observe yourself. This is something I believe is a strange physical thing that we all have. It's something that I've had numerous people see themselves and look and be able to observe it themselves. And so I believe that this thing that we are able to observe.
So tell me about the thing.
Yes, I apologize. I believe it's God, and I believe it's like.
Wait, what's the thing that we can observe?
So a lot of people can do it. A lot of people can't. I've had people tell me that they can't see it, and I've had people tell me that they couldn't. So
okay, what's the thing? What's the thing that we're seeing?
Okay, so you can easily just whip your hand out in front of you and look at your hand, face your palm towards you, and then if you look like kind of past it and then kind of like mess with your vision, your perception, you can kind of see a little aura of some sort around your hands. If you observe it on the camera, listeners and watchers,
nope,
you can kind of
can't see anything. Can't see any aura.
It's a thing that only, I don't know, only if select people that I've dealt with.
What you're seeing on the camera is the green screen, by the way.
Yeah, there is a green screen.
It's the green screen cutout. That's the aura that you're seeing right around my hand.
For sure. No. There's another like aspect. There's an optical illusion, if you will. Like, you know how black holes, whenever they're like passing by galaxies and whatnot, they'll warp around the black hole, and you can see behind the black hole and see the galaxy further away.
That's gravity doing gravity things. It's not an aura.
So do you believe that we all have a gravitational pull around us? Do you think we all
very small?
Very
immeasurable.
Small. Okay.
Immeasurable.
Okay, so very measurable. Very. But the fact that it's there.
No, I said immeasurable.
Yeah, very immeasurable. But the fact that it's there is super very, like, it's a phenomenon in its own way. Why do we have a gravitational pull?
What do you mean why? That's a law of physics, that anything with mass has a gravitational effect. Like, if you're asking why, you may as well ask, like, why do neutrons decay into protons and electrons and electron antineutrinos? Like, it's like you're asking why are the laws of physics the way that they are?
And okay, and so that's where you can come to take that. You can take that and you can ask yourself, why was it all created? Or why was it all made, and how was it all made down to that? And
I don't hold the position that it was all created or made.
And so you think that it was just all like you just, I think I heard you say you just think it all just worked down.
I don't think that there was like a maker. Otherwise I'd believe in a god.
Do you believe that consciousness could have been a form way before like any of the mass that was created or any of the matter that was created in our universe? Do you think
no, I don't think
consciousness could have? So consciousness is still misunderstood. Wouldn't that kind of make you wonder where that would be the actual that would be the God that you're not seeing?
Consciousness is misunderstood, so therefore God?
Wouldn't that make you ponder it whenever you have thoughts of good and bad, dealing with
wouldn't that make me ponder
your
what?
mind all the time?
Like, look, consciousness is not like the most interesting phenomenon to me. Like, there are other things that are far more interesting, so I spend my time thinking about those things.
Well, you're stuck on being an atheist right now. So what I'm trying to tell you is that you are missing the fact that your consciousness is what is God. Your consciousness is what made everything the way it could be.
Okay, why should I think that consciousness exists before matter?
Matter existed the same time as consciousness, as warmth needed to be able to exist to create
Why
life
should I
on
think that
Earth.
consciousness is warmth?
Warmth exists only within conscious entities.
That doesn't seem true at all.
Explain. Okay.
Yeah, like a
other
fire.
than
A fire is pretty.
non-physical,
A fire is like pretty evidently warm, and also like pretty evidently not conscious. At least unless you're like
non-inanimate
a.
objects that are
Well, but fire is
talking to
warm,
you.
right?
Non-objects that can't talk to you. Those are not.
Okay,
what I'm
well,
talking about. I'm
amoebas
talking
can't
about
talk to me
physical.
either.
But they make warmth.
I don't. Yeah, I don't, and I don't think that they're conscious.
Do you think that they? Or do they? I don't. I'm just a young man, but do you think those amoebas can communicate to each other?
I suspect not. It depends on what you mean by
You
communicate.
suspect not?
I mean, like, if by communicate you just mean like send signals, then like, yeah, most organisms can send signals. But like when we think of the word communicate, we usually like imagine some intent, some like, you know, volitional behavior, and I don't think that they do that.
I don't think they have any maliciousness in them, but I think that everybody has a feeling that is in our nature to either exist or not exist. Some of us want to just die, and some of us just want to live. And so in those regards, I ask myself, how is it that we have this energy, this warmth, this consciousness, and then people are lost on the fact that there's no God? Why do you have a consciousness to be able to experience life? Why would anyone want to give you life in the first place?
They don't seem like they're necessarily related ideas.
The fact that they coexist within each other's realm is all that.
Well, I don't think
there
God
is.
exists at all. So I don't think that they do coexist.
So how do you explain giving off the warmth? Do you just think it's just you
There are
eating
laws of
food and
physics that
working
explain
out?
that.
Yeah. Do you think it's just natural life
Yeah,
essence
it's
leaving your body through
the reason why you give
living?
off warmth is because you're composed of molecules. The molecules are basically jostling around every which way, and every time a charged particle, which molecules are made out of, accelerates, it emits radiation. That's, you know,
Exactly.
that's like
And
the
so,
Stefan Boltzmann law, roughly.
right. And so
Or
what
rather,
I'm
that's
saying
the
is just
microscopic explanation
that.
for the Stefan Boltzmann law.
Sorry. So
Go
what
ahead.
I'm just saying is that the whole thing about us just giving off that same essence that maybe our sun is giving off, which I think it's all radiation. And if that's true, the radiation that our sun's giving off is giving off the same radiation our universe is giving off. We're all experiencing our universe's essence and culmination.
Okay, what does this have to do with God?
It is God. It is
Okay,
all things.
so you're telling me that warmth is God.
The good feeling warmth where you feel like good. Yes, that is God alone.
So-
That is the proof there.
Wait, so the proof, so you don't think God has anything to do with creating the universe? You just think that like warmth, you just think God is like when you feel good and warm and happy.
No, I think that positivity is God. I believe positivity is what made life exist.
Okay.
I believe we used to be in darkness.
Thank you for being here, Leo. I thought that you said at the beginning of the conversation that you believe that a God created the universe. From Topaz with the £5. Love your content. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that, Topaz. From Kilotonics with the $5. It's crazy how so many people's belief systems are just unknowingly God of the gaps. Discover something we don't know the why for, and that's God. Yeah. From Grimmy with the $2. Is guest thinking thermal radiation is God? Kinda. That's definitely how it seemed. All right. I don't know who was next. I think maybe Flickshot was next.
Hello.
Flickshot, how's it going?
It's going good. I just saw your stream and I wanted to ask you a couple questions because some of your stuff kind of confuses me.
Yeah,
So,
before we start though, do you believe in a God?
okay. Yes, I do believe in a God. I'm Christian.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
Okay. So first question is, do you believe that emotion is more than a chemical?
Not really, no.
Okay. So think about this then, and this is just something that I believe, right? For emotion, right, and for souls and that kind of thing, I personally believe that there is a metaphysical property to emotions and souls, because otherwise it seems like it's all just kind of meaningless, right? So that's
I
the
don't know
reason
how
why
that
I
makes it
choose-
meaningless.
Well, I mean, it makes it meaningless because, for me, whenever it comes down to it, if emotion is nothing but a chemical and souls don't really exist, then in that case, that means we're nothing more than animals,
Yeah.
and therefore we should treat each other as animals and that kind of thing. And animals don't, like, humans obviously have some higher form of purpose, and that's
Why do you
that's
say
personal.
that it doesn't seem obvious to me. And I mean, like, look, let's suppose it's true that emotions have some, metaphysical property attached to them. How does that then make them meaningful?
Right. It makes them meaningful because then it allows it to be something beyond. Because think about it. If everything is physical, right, then that means that after this, it would mean, well, one, I just think it's a nihilistic way to think, because it would mean, one, there's nothing after this, which means that it would be a blank void. Two, it would make it to where, like, if your grandma or loved one died, or I'm saying this because my grandma recently died.
Sorry to hear that. Hope you're doing okay.
No, that's fine, man. No, that's okay. But what I'm saying is that, like, I like to believe that there's more, that she actually loved me, and that she was not just flesh that thought that it thought.
Look,
if that makes sense.
So, look, if my view is that love is a particular arrangement, a particular kind of chemical reaction, then
Right.
if she had that chemical reaction when, nearby you or when thinking of you or whatever, then that means that she actually loved you.
Okay.
Right? But you didn't
that
really
was
answer
only
my
in the
question.
physical sense, because
But you didn't really answer my
sorry.
question. My question was like, okay, suppose for a moment that there are metaphysical properties for emotion.
Mhm.
How does that then make
Right.
them meaningful? Because, like, it doesn't imply that they continue after death. It doesn't imply that there's some, like, teleology behind them. It just implies that there's an extra kind of property for them. How does that make them meaningful?
I feel like that actually does kind of stump me there. Something that I do feel like, though, is that, once again, I feel like that we are more than animals, and I think that people like to agree that when somebody is loving someone, or when somebody shows a certain emotion, it's like it doesn't, like, it's not tied to just being in the flesh and only of blood. So in a way, if it was that way, for me, this is how I think. If it was that way, don't you think that that's kind of almost like a Matrix type thing, where everything that we experience is simply just like a simulation? Like, sure, it's physical and it's real, but isn't it in the end technically all just a simulation? So in that case,
How is it a
if we're nothing but-
simulation if it's real?
Well, sorry, I think I mixed up two things there, because I'm not trying to say that we're in the Matrix or anything. I'm trying to say that, like, if everything that we're experiencing right now, if I get hurt, or if I feel like the touch of somebody or that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
If I'm feeling that, and it's just how my body reacts due to instinct and like purely my biological brain working in the background,
Yeah.
then it makes it feel, right. It makes it feel like, in the end, it doesn't necessarily matter, because there's nothing really to look forward to. There's nothing watching over us that can cause internal guilt.
What makes something matter?
I personally believe that it's like something that either triggers, like, human emotion and that kind of thing, or something that makes people, like, understand, like, okay, this is what like, this is love, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling angry, or whatever.
So all of those things can happen given a purely physical explanation, right? There are events that can take place that trigger emotion, and so they would matter.
Yes, but it's still only in a physical sense, and it seems nihilistic to me.
Why does that make it not matter?
Because, wait, what?
Why does that make it not matter?
Well, because in that sense, it means that there's no moral obligation to not do things. So, for
So
example,
that doesn't follow, by the way.
Well, wait, what?
That doesn't follow. And by the way, meaning and moral obligation are completely different categories of things.
Yes, I definitely agree, but it's part of another point that I'm trying to make. If
but like,
if
with regard,
everything is
before we move on to that, like, it's just not clear to me why we can't have meaning if we are purely physical, or why we automatically get meaning if there is some metaphysical properties of our emotions or of our mind. Like, neither of those seem obvious to me.
It's because we have a purpose, like, in some form, shape, or way.
Well, we don't.
Think about
just our emotions having a metaphysical property doesn't mean that we have a purpose. If you want a purpose, you have to do something. You need some sort of purpose grantor. So, like, then you would need to explain that. Then you need to propose that there's a God, not just that there's some metaphysical reality to our emotions.
Right. The reason why I was bringing all that up and what this has to do with there being a God is I personally like to believe that like, we are more than flesh that thinks that it thinks. If that makes sense to you.
I mean, look, if we're capable of thinking that we're thinking, then we are thinking.
Well, yes, I mean, I understand that, but, like, I like to believe that we have a soul and that our emotions and everything that we do is not simulated only purely based off of a biological machine, which I understand that our bodies are biological machines, right? Sort of, in a way. We are organisms, but I like to believe that we have some sort of deeper thing in us that makes it to where we can understand right and wrong. Because, like, think about it, right? Like, humans have an understanding of right and wrong. And I also
Most of us
will say that yeah, of course. And I do believe that brain chemicals and that kind of thing can affect people or hinder people because of the fact that we are in a physical world. I do believe that they can hinder people from being emotional or feeling for people. I mean, it
but that's really
like
weird then, right?
that kind of
but that's really weird then, right? If it's the case that, like, the physical brain can basically completely control all of the, like, all of a person's behavior in different ways. Like, if your brain is one way, then you'll do one thing. If your brain's another way, then you do another thing. What's the requirement? What does the soul do?
The soul would be the thing that, like, allows you to understand the right and wrong. Like, there's certain levels
but even
of, like,
even understanding is controlled by the brain.
Well, yes, I understand that as well, but I'm talking about, like, for example, we know that dogs have a level of morality, right? Like,
sure. Chimpanzees do too.
That oh yeah, of course. And I do believe that God has allowed different types of organisms to have a certain level on the spectrum of, like, the ladder.
So do dogs have souls?
I see that's something that I find very, very interesting. I personally do not believe that they do, but I do believe that they have kind of what you
do. Chimpanzees have souls?
No, they don't.
All right.
I'm saying that.
So then there's an issue. When did humans get souls? When in the evolutionary history did humans get souls?
That is something that I find, like, very, very interesting to talk about too, because, like you were saying, right? Like, you kind of believe, from my understanding, you sort of believe the way that yeah. So basically what you're saying is you believe that humans, dogs, chimpanzees, whatever, none of them have any sort of anything beyond this life, right? Basically, like, this is pretty much all there is.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, and by the way, I'm not very good at debates. I just kind of had some questions, and I'm just on here because I thought it'd be fun.
You're fine.
But basically what I'm saying is that it confuses me, because it's like, if dogs can understand right and wrong to a certain level, right? And chimpanzees can understand to a certain level, but there's that one thing that they lack. They are always overtaken by animalistic tendency. They lack the ability of control to a certain extent, right? No matter what you do.
So then they don't lack it because it's not. Because it's just to a certain extent. Like, they have it to a certain degree, perhaps not as much as we do.
They don't have the level that humans have. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't have the same level of control that humans have,
right?
or that a lot of humans.
But Flickshot, you wouldn't. So but Flickshot, hold on. You wouldn't say that elephants, or you wouldn't say that gorillas have some special metaphysical thing because
No.
well, hold on. You wouldn't say that they have some special metaphysical thing because, they have more strength than humans do. Humans have a little bit, but like gorillas just have, they have it in a more sophisticated way. Now, you wouldn't say that just because they have more of this thing that makes them have a soul. So then why would us having more control? Why would us having more psychological control make us special?
Control over their own animalistic tendencies. For example,
that's what I'm talking about.
There's etiquette to human behavior. There's etiquette to human behavior. We understand things that, like, we understand that, for example, in terms of, and I don't know how strict a TikTok is on topics, but for example, we as humans understand that mating is not like how animals mate, right? Animals, like male animals, don't really seem to have that sense of or even the females for that sense. Neither of them really seem to have this idea of, oh, there's something more to this. No, it's just, oh, okay, like you're female, I'm male, we do it, and then we pass on like our DNA to other people. I mean,
right? like to be clear, like there are tons of animals. At least, well, I don't want to say tons because there's a lot of animals that don't, but there are animals that have like social codes and like social, like you might call them like manners. There are notions of like, I don't want to say like grape perhaps in the animal kingdom, but there are notions of monogamy and that people will fight over a mate. Like if you have like a monogamous pair of animals and then another one comes in to try to steal the female or something, you will have the other male fight the other one. So like there are like these things exist in different ways in different animals. I don't know what makes like ours might be more sophisticated, but like it's not clear. Yes. It's not clear at all that like it is uniquely special.
I also feel like too that there's a lot of like, that's the reason why like I don't really hate on anybody for believing anything. Like I'm a Christian, right? But I really hate like these people either on both sides that are like, oh, like you are stupid because you believe this. It's just like I think that everybody's way of thinking is very, very different and very unique.
By the way, you haven't really answered my question, which is when do humans like at what point in history did humans get the soul? Because like there's like this whole evolutionary path, right?
I feel like from the moment that they were created by God, that for me is the moment that they're.
Do you think that evolution happened?
Bible, God breathed the life of air like into.
Okay, so you don't think evolution's real?
I believe that it's fairly possible to some extent, but I also do believe that like I personally believe that God's time is very relevant to ours as well, and I don't believe the people that are like, oh yeah, no, God actually created the universe in like 1 million years. But I mean, I do think that in order for some of it to happen, I think it's fairly possible, I suppose.
Well, I guess my question is like, look, so humans evolved from earlier ancestors, and if you go back 6-10 million years, it's pretty hard to say that our ancestors were human. They would have been much closer to the way that we think of as like great apes. They're less sophisticated in intelligence. They have less structured social behaviors, things like this. So at what point during that evolutionary time period do humans get the soul? When did God say, okay, I'm putting the soul in then?
I mean, I personally believe that regardless of the skeletal system or the biological makeup, I feel like that regardless, it's very possible God could have given them the soul first thing.
But what's first thing, right? Did the Australopithecus get a soul?
I mean, I'm not really sure, but I mean, then again, I don't really believe in like full-blown evolution, like at all.
Oh, really? That's why.
Because it goes back to the same. It feels nihilistic to me, like in a way, because again, like if it I can't really make the point that I'm trying to make here. And I'm very sorry. I'm not really good at this kind of thing.
You're fine. You're doing fine.
But
by the way, this is the guy I'm talking about. This is Australopithecus.
Yeah. So basically, monkey.
Like, did he have a soul?
Like in a way. I mean, I think that if we did look like that at one point, I think it's fairly possible that there could have been a distinction. But then again, I don't really believe in evolution.
Okay. Well, then maybe we should talk about that because like you. Okay. How do you figure that we have all these bones of like very gradual transitions from things that look like the guy I just showed you to today? We have like bones across the entire spectrum from that guy to this guy. And we also have DNA evidence that we share a common ancestor with, say, chimpanzees and bonobos. The DNA the DNA tells us who we're related to. This is how we do paternity tests, and it turns out when you test the DNA, we're related to bonobos.
Well, yes, but if you do a DNA test a certain way, we could technically be connected to a lot of things. So
yes,
that's the only issue.
Yeah, we are. That's the thing. You can use DNA to figure out how closely related you are to a thing. For example, if I took my DNA and I took your DNA, look, if
like a lot of things bleed.
So if I took my DNA and I took your DNA, then let's say that we had one common grandparent 5 generations back. You'd be able to figure that out from the DNA, right? You'd be able to figure out how long ago you and I shared a common ancestor, how many generations back. Similarly, you can do the exact same thing for humans and chimpanzees. You can figure out how long ago, how many, it's not like an exact count of generations because things get lost in the mix, but you can figure out how long ago humans and like the common ancestor, the common grandparent of humans and chimpanzees lived. And it was like 6 million years ago, or
okay.
I think that's the right number.
Oh, something else that I have as well. Do you know the evidence about the Grand Canyon or whatever, and the layers of the Grand Canyon?
What about the Grand Canyon? All
right. So, for example, the Grand Canyon is supposedly, from what I've heard, this is a point that I've heard before, is that the Grand Canyon has layers, like ground layers to it, right? And the layers of rock and stuff like that, you can trace it like back in like time, right? So you can go down the layers and kind of estimate, I think, like how long ago each thing was there. Supposedly, somehow it ends up getting down to the point where you figure out that the rock layer is only like a certain amount of years old, and it makes it to where it's like not really as provable. Also, on top of that,
wait, sorry, what does this have to do with evolution?
Like it's trying to say basically that the rock layers that are in the Grand Canyon were not old enough for it to be like millions of years or whatever.
But what does that have to do with evolution?
Like for the Earth to have changed or whatever. But once again, that's not a very good point for me.
But what does that have to do with evolution? You're talking about geology. What does that have to do with evolution?
Well, yeah, but I was trying to talk about that what's it called, like the evidence that was there, but I don't have enough information on that, so that's my bad on that one.
That's geology. It's not about biology, not evolution.
Well, yes, but like I was saying, like there's evidence for like you're saying that the world is like 6 million years old, right?
I'm saying
it's like older than that.
It's like 4.5 billion years old, but yeah.
Okay, right.
But it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be 4.5 billion years old. It doesn't have to be 4.5 billion years old for evidence to still be true, or for evolution to still be true.
Dinosaur bones are also like we found dinosaur bones as well, and they also are only about like I think they said to like 2,000 years old.
What does this have to do with evolution?
Dude, we're talking about bones and stuff. Like we're talking about bones and like evolution and creatures and that kind of thing. I'm talking about like if dinosaurs were a thing 1 million years ago,
which we the dinosaurs. Can we agree that dinosaurs definitely existed because we have their bones?
Oh yeah, 100% dinosaurs existed. Yeah, no, so like 100% on that.
So like, what makes you think that dinosaurs existed 2,000 years ago?
Because supposedly, from what I've heard, we've gotten the dinosaur bones and we've looked at like some of the stuff that's left over from them, and then we looked at them and they weren't millions of years old. And also,
how do you figure out how old the dinosaur bones are to determine that they're not millions of years old?
There's some sort of thing inside the bone marrow, I believe. But I mean, once again, these are all just the questions that I'm asking you.
So you should look into these. You should look into these. So where did you hear about that, by the way?
I kind of forgot. And again, I'm not really.
Is it from a place called Answers in Genesis, perhaps?
No.
Is it from a place called the Discovery Institute?
No, I don't believe it was.
Is it from did it come from a YouTube video with a Christian guy talking?
I think it was just some scientist that was talking about it or some crap, but I don't know if it was a Christian guy or what, but I just remember hearing.
Was it a guy named Kent Hovind?
No.
Dennis Prager, perhaps?
No.
Okay, well, so here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you go like if you're interested, what you're talking about is in 2019 or not in 2019. When was this? There was a discovery in like I want to say the early 2000s, maybe 2010s or something like this, of soft tissue in certain T-Rex bones. Now this is like really rare, and it's tiny amounts of soft tissue, but it is soft tissue.
Okay.
And so the question is why is it there? Why is it in these bones? And so we now have explanations for why it's in these bones. And it's consistent with these bones being still tens of millions of years old. So it's just not clear to me that like it seems like you've heard the talking point, but you haven't looked into it.
Yeah, I would definitely admit that for a lot of that. One more question that I have, and then I'll leave. Can you prove that logic exists?
I don't think that. Well, okay. What do you mean by exists here? Do you mean like it has some sort of ontological status independent of human minds, or do you mean something else?
Yeah, like.
And by the way, before we continue, I just want to acknowledge. Before we continue, I just want to acknowledge that we are pivoting really hard away from the evolution conversation.
Yeah.
And the reason why we were talking about evolution to begin with is because you think it's not real, which is like a crazy thing to think, by the way, considering like the overwhelming amount of evidence that we have. Like if you ask biologists, like 99% of them will say, yeah, of course, evolution's real. So just wanted to acknowledge that we're pivoting, and then we can pivot. So what did you mean by exists with regards to logic?
So my bad. Do you want to go back to talking about the other thing?
It's fine. It's fine if you don't want to. Like that's fine. I'm not going to force you to do what you don't want to do.
I would love to.
It's just so I brought up this example of DNA. Why is it that we use DNA to figure out how closely you and I are related, how long ago you and I shared a common ancestor, but we can't use that same DNA method to figure out how long ago I and a chimpanzee share a common ancestor?
Well, also, I mean, isn't it like really hard to like, because aren't dinosaur bones also estimate like how they were put together? Like aren't dinosaur bones?
What does that have to do with what I just said?
Well, because you're saying that like it's
I asked you a
using
question.
DNA and that kind of thing, right?
I'm talking about chimpanzee and human DNA.
Is it an estimate?
Is what an estimate?
Is it an estimate?
Is what an estimate?
The DNA is it like an estimate?
Like we can just sequence human DNA, right? We agree on that.
Right.
Like you can just like find all, it's ACTG. You could just like find the entire list of human DNA.
Right.
And then you can do the same thing for chimpanzees. Both of them are alive, so we have access to their DNA. Like humans and chimpanzees both exist. Then you can compare the DNA,
so you do them
and you can show
towards each other. Oh, okay.
That
makes sense.
And then you compare the human and the human DNA and the chimpanzee DNA, and you find out that they share a common ancestor.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In the same way that we would compare your DNA to my DNA to figure out how many generations ago we shared a grandparent.
Okay, see that makes a lot more sense. I was confused there because I was like, how would you even tell that without like?
Yeah, no, it's just like
it was like millions of years ago.
It's just like comparing the DNA of two brothers, except it's a lot longer ago. It's a lot more generations back.
Okay, bro, I just said I'm anti-science. I'm not anti-science, bro.
So look,
I'm just confused.
And that's fine. Learning is a good thing. So my point is that like if we trust paternity tests or family relation tests that use DNA, like you can go on like what is it, myancestry.com or whatever these websites, and they will say like, oh, you and this person share a great grandfather or have a great grandmother in common or whatever, and like that's true, like you can verify that. If we trust that works, why can't we just do the same thing for us and chimpanzees or us and bonobos?
I mean, I suppose that makes sense, but I mean, like, I'm not really super crazy educated on how what's it called, on how DNA testing works and that kind of thing. I would have to look into it and see how it actually like plays out.
So but, I mean like so I can just.
But what you're saying definitely does make sense though. What you're saying definitely does make sense.
So what I can do is, and there's obviously more reading to do and more learning to do, which is cool if you want to do it. But the analogy that I think is probably most effective is, every time that somebody has a child, or like produces offspring, there's like a few mutations, right? Maybe that mutation comes about because of some viral infection that the parent got. Maybe it's just like some random mutation, whatever. And so every generation has like a few more new mutations, right, than the previous generation. Most of them have no effect on anything, right? They're not negative, they're not positive, they just don't do anything.
Exactly.
It's just a slight change in the DNA. And so what you can think of is reproduction as like photocopying, right? And so if I have a child, you could think of the child's DNA as like a photocopy of half of my DNA and half of my wife's DNA, like photocopied and then scanned together. And so any of the mutations that are in my DNA will also, well, roughly half of them anyway, will be passed on to my child. And any of the mutations in my wife's DNA will also be passed on to her child. And so the point is that every generation gets a little bit different from the one before it. And so what you can do is you can basically check, if you want to figure out if you and I are related, what we would see is how many of these mutations do we have in common with each other? That's like one way that you can check these things. There's something called an endogenous retrovirus, which is a good keyword to look up, by the way. But this is the kind of thing I'm alluding to. And so the point is the fewer mutations you have in common with something, the further back you kind of branched off, because then there were a whole bunch of mutations on their end, on their branch, and a whole bunch of mutations on your end, on your branch. And so the fewer you have in common, it just means that your common ancestor was longer ago. And so we can just figure out, using this kind of like keeping track of how much we have in common DNA-wise, like literally comparing the letters, the sequences. Just by comparing those, we can figure out how long ago we share a common ancestor with some other thing, whether it's a human or a chimpanzee or whatever. That's the basic idea. And there's a particularly compelling version of this that involves something called endogenous retroviruses. Basically, like a virus you'll catch a virus, just like a regular virus, and a retrovirus is a kind of virus that like chops up your DNA and then inserts itself into your DNA, and then it stitches it back together. And the reason why it does this is because it then kind of hijacks your cellular mechanisms to like reproduce more of itself. But it doesn't always work. So sometimes you'll just like get a virus, it'll stitch itself into your DNA, and then something will go wrong, and your cells will just continue being normal. And you just have like this extra chunk of DNA now from the virus that doesn't do anything. And so like we can track those chunks of DNA because like if my great-great-great-great-grandparent got one of these, I would have it, right? It would, like that exact chunk would be passed down to me. And so the idea is that we can kind of keep track of those like exact chunks and match them, and we can use that to figure out how long ago we share an ancestor, or my brother and I share an ancestor or whatever. We can keep track of these things. So that's the rough story. Definitely there's a lot of reading to do, but that's like how it works. And
something else
it's really compelling. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry. I was taught in high school that mutation does not equal, usually in mutations, right? Like when bad genetic things happen, right? When there's inconsistencies, most of the time it doesn't necessarily have any form of good effect, which is the reason why I find it hard to believe that mutation caused us to become even better than worse. Well, I find it hard to believe that mutation it makes it to where we are better than worse.
So most mutations don't do anything. Like most mutations, it's like you have a single, like an A switches to a C or something like that, and it just doesn't do anything. Just because our DNA is billions of letters long, and so like flipping a single letter usually isn't going to have any sort of effect. Now it is true that when a mutation does have an effect, it's often more detrimental than it is positive. And so if the effect is detrimental enough, that organism will just not survive, right? And in fact, there is a kind of mutation that can happen on the X chromosome that if it's a mutation that occurs so it'll happen on a single X chromosome, and if it happens on an X chromosome, I was just talking about this with my mother. She's a medical doctor, and she was telling me about it. If it happens just on the X chromosome, and you're born a girl, then you won't have the disease. If it happens on both X chromosomes, and you're a girl, then you will have the disease. And if it's born on, and if it's only on one X chromosome, but you're a boy, you're a male, then you just won't make it past. You won't make it past pregnancy. Like the fetus will just die. And so because the mutation is so severe when it's on a single X chromosome, and so like this is just like a thing that happens. If the mutation causes sufficiently bad things, then it just won't be passed on to the next generation, because the organism will just die before it has the chance. But if a mutation does happen to be good, which occasionally it will be, we have evidence that like such things exist. For example, the sickle cell mutation is a positive mutation, it turns out.
What?
It is. So I can explain that, but also like the mutation that allows us to process milk, to like produce lactose well into adulthood, that's a positive mutation, because now adults can drink milk. These happen occasionally, and when they do, they get passed on. So I can explain the sickle cell thing. Sickle cell anemia happens when you get 2 copies of the same mutation, because it has to occur on both chromosomes. I think it either has to occur on both chromosomes, or you have to get 2 copies of the mutation. Anyway, but that only happens that only happens for 1 of 4 children of people who have sickle cell anemia. But the rest of the children of people who have sickle cell, so if you have like a father that has sickle cell anemia and a mother who doesn't, who doesn't have any of the mutations, for example, the father will give all of the children 1 mutation, and the mother will give all of the children no mutations. That means that all of your children will have 1 copy of the mutation, and so they just won't get sickle cell anemia. What they will get, though, is they will get essentially immunity to malaria, which is like hugely beneficial in that part of the world where sickle cell anemia is common, because malaria is like one of the #1 killers in like that part of Africa, which is where sickle cell anemia is common.
So from what I've gathered from what you're trying to tell me is that you're saying that there are possibilities for good mutations, is basically what you're trying
absolutely
to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so with that being said, though, is there have we seen any form of mutation from things 2,000 years ago to today? And this is just me being curious. Like, I know that there's,
you mean like in humans,
like in
or
in
just
anything.
just
Like,
in anything? Well, yeah.
Just in anything.
So there was and I should probably let you go soon, but I'll tell you about this because it's really cool.
Yeah, my bad.
No, you're fine. So there was an experiment that was starting to be that began being conducted. I think it was in like the 80s, I want to say.
Oh, okay.
Let me just pull up the Wikipedia page so I don't get it wrong. So it started in 1988. So it was an experiment that started in 1988. Basically, they took a whole bunch of bacteria, and it was like an E. coli bacteria, and they basically just separated it into a whole bunch, like the same strain of bacteria. They separated it into a whole bunch of different samples, and then they just basically put them in different environments. They like, those like plastic dishes that like you use in like a laboratory to like study bacteria or whatever.
Yeah.
So they basically put them in different dishes. They took like the same sample and separated it into a bunch of different dishes with different like nutrients in them and different like, acidity and all this stuff. And so they basically just did this over and over again for tens of thousands of generations. Yeah, they're petri dishes.
Right.
And amazingly, like the mutation was fairly like, you could sequence the DNA of these bacteria, by the way, so you can just check. What was found is that I think it was in 2008, the experimental team, because this was 33,000 generations in, they found that one particular branch of like the descendants, because they changed it every 6 months or something like this, one particular branch developed a mutation that allowed it to process a new kind of food.
Okay.
And so it was able to, the phrase is that it's able to grow aerobically on citrate, which is a citrate is like a kind of thing. Go ahead.
Don't we know that cells are like automatically do that like faster? And isn't it kind of like, I don't know, like, I guess the word I'm looking for is like not like kind of comparing apples to oranges. Like, I understand we have cells in our own body, but like, isn't it kind of comparing apples to oranges to say that a mutation on a fairly small level for like 1 or 2 cells, or even like 100 million cells, isn't it kind of far-fetched to try and say that like that one mutation means that over the span of millions of years, we gained more cognitive function. We became like incredibly different and all that kind of stuff. So like, I'm just like,
I don't think
know.
so. I mean, like, consider this. All of your cells, all of your cells come from a single sperm meeting a single egg. All you need is a mutation in a single sperm, right?
Right.
And or the single egg, and then that mutation will be passed on to literally every single one of your cells.
Right, but that's growth, though. That's different.
So
Birth
my point is a
different.
mutation in a single cell can lead to that mutation being prevalent in the whole organism.
Right. Yeah, but like mutations don't like escalate that much, though. Like
Why not?
if it really was like what you're,
Why not?
My bad. I'm not really sure, and once again, I'm not very like educated.
So I mean,
I'm here
just
to learn.
like look, the way that human organisms develop, like the way that humans develop, like when we're fetuses or whatever, is that like there are certain genes that control how long different growth hormones are active. So
I've seen that little girl that like she looks like she's like 90 or whatever, but she's only like 10 or whatever or something like that.
But like even just like the number of fingers that you have is controlled by like a few genes that basically like they're on for a certain amount of time, and then another gene diffuses enough that it turns off the other gene before you grow more than 5 fingers. And so like if you just have a mutation in just one of these genes, maybe it says maybe one of the mutations makes it a little bit more resistant to the turn off hormone, then you would just grow 7 fingers instead of 5, right? So like a lot of these big effects are controlled by very, very small things. In fact, there's a something fairly remarkable that was shown in let me pull it up. That was shown in 2021, where they took a fish. It's a kind of fish called a zebrafish, and they showed that if you make just all it requires is 2 mutations. There's a mutation in something called a mutation in the DNA that drives the expression of HOXA11B. It's just a particular kind of thing in this type of fish. It suddenly goes from having fins to having hands.
Ooh.
Like it changes the bone structure. It like, because bony fish, they have like kind of the same bone structure that we have. It's just their bones don't go past the skin, right? And so by changing just like a single thing in like 2 different pathways, those bones just keep growing, and now you have like hand-like structures. And so like,
also agree
like that's crazy, but it only requires a small thing.
Yeah. Don't you think that human interference when it comes to science experiments and that kind of thing ought to try and like prove evolution or whatever?
This is an example of doing that. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. But don't you think that to be able to actually wait? No, sorry, my bad. The something that I heard one time was that evolution is not it. Oh damn it. There's some sort of thing that I heard one time where it was like sort of like evolution isn't like a good theory because of the fact that it doesn't follow the things that you need for like a science experiment or whatever. I forgot what the 3 main things are, but it's like you need certain things to be able to form a theory, like scientifically. And evolution doesn't have all of the steps necessary.
You have to be more specific. Like,
yeah, I'm like, sorry. Anyways, I will let you go here, and I'll let some other people talk. But thank you so much, dude. You are a very, very like cool guy.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and not a lot of like other people here are super nice, but you are. So thank you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for being here, Flickshot. Take care.
No problem. Take care.
All right, let's read some super chats, and then we'll move on to our next guest. He was nice. I mean, like, look, he probably grew up in a fairly religious household, and he learned a lot of things that are probably wrong. But like, he seems interested in learning. He seems like he's actually he wants to know stuff. So we'll see. From Blonde Nightmare with the $5. So if I did drugs and feel all good and warm, am I God? Yes. This is with regards to the previous guy, not that guy. From Lord Illuminous Pooh with the $5. I'm an ally all day, but certainly not the whole Siberian Orchestra is trans. Yeah, they're not trans, nor are they Siberian. I don't even think they're an orchestra. From Nolder, JJ with the 10 pounds, we are animals. As Forrest says, we are too big to be bacteria and we move too much to be plants. Yeah, that's true. From Orion Cooper with the $5, who puts out a sign that says, you must be this high to join the live, and with a picture of Willie Nelson today. What? I'm so confused. Oh, I see. I get it. From Pi 3.1 with the $5, why did chemical reactions decide to keep improving without guidance? Well, the ones that didn't improve were outcompeted by the ones that did improve. From Binary Ghost with the $5, kind of a backwards metaphysical take in my view. Emotions are physical chemical processes. Why should a soul have emotions at all? That's a good point too. From JM with the $2, thank you so much for the thumbs up, bud. And from Blonde Nightmare with $10, let's get a big round of applause for Blonde Nightmare in the chat, y'all. Of course you like to believe it, it's comforting, but just because it's comforting doesn't mean it's true, and atheists care about truth regardless of how it makes us feel. Well, I don't know if atheists are like perfect epistemological machines, but like, you know, people who, a lot of atheists are like, yeah, I want to know what's true. And like, that is a driving motivator. From Gretchen with the $6.66. Thank you, Gretchen. Flickshot, you're pretty far out there. Have you considered the Illuminati and our most high lava lamp? Could be the purpose you're seeking. Just, it's true. Yeah, you should consider becoming illuminated by the lava lamp. Hashtag IBTLL. From Grimmy with the $5. Oh, you're reminding me to drink my water. Does Guess not understand that code of conduct is found in many species? From Dwayne Warren, if moral anti-realism is true, then self-sacrifice has no objective value, yet we universally treat it as intrinsic good. One of those must be false. Well, if moral anti-realism is true, then self-sacrifice, then like definitionally nothing has, like no morals have, nothing has objective moral value. And we do treat it as intrinsically good, but intrinsically good and objective value are not the same thing. And so they don't, one of those doesn't have to be false. Like, I agree that humans generally view more self-sacrifice as valuable, but that doesn't mean that it's objective. From Carpajula with the €2, taste-wise, how would you rank pasta, pizza, and burger? The best pasta, I think, I think the best pasta like bodies both pizza and burgers. But generally, I think that pizza is probably the best all-arounder. And I would, even though I do like burgers, I think that they're probably at the bottom of this list. From Binary Ghost with the $5, humans didn't get soul until 1953 when James Brown started his career and bestowed soul upon the masses. Get up, get on up. Absolutely true. That's exactly when ensoulment happened. It was 1953. Which is why Trump's Make America Great Again is referring to before 1953, because Trump doesn't want America to have soul. From Mike Ellison with the $20. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you, Dr. Blitz, for your work here. 3 cheers for science, indeed. Hip hip hooray. From Pat in the chat, all hail the God Defeater Spanky. No, the God Defeater is Atheismo and the lava lamp. And from, I'm not going to read your name. Thanks for the $2 New Zealand dollars, though. I appreciate it. All right, let's bring up our next guest. Let's bring up Chromix. Chromic, how's it going?
Hi, very good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Chromic, do you believe in a god?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and which one would
Yes, I
that be,
do.
just so I don't make any wrong assumptions?
I'm Christian. I'm
Okay.
Christian, so
Okay,
I believe
cool.
in the God of the Bible.
Sure.
Yes.
So, Chromic, look, I don't believe that, but if it's true, I'd love to believe that. So, what would you say is like the best evidence that you could give me, or like the best argument that you could give me that would convince somebody like me who has had my heart hardened by God?
Of course, I would love to try to convince you with this, and I'm going to make my best attempt at it. I do not intend to pretend that I will know everything or have every answer for you, but I will try to do it to the best of my ability, okay?
Sure.
Great. I do have a few questions for you, if you don't mind, just before we
Sure
go
thing.
on after this. just to make it more structured for us,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell me why you are an atheist? What is like the main reason why you
Yeah,
don't believe in God?
it seems like superstition. I've never really heard good reasons to think that it's like real. And I have heard good reasons to think that it's not real.
Okay. And would your main reason be science, for instance?
Not
Because
really.
I assume
I mean,
you're a physicist and
like that's my main reason for not believing in like the God that like people believed in 2,000 years ago, like 2,500 years ago, when they thought that like God was like a dude who threw lightning bolts. But like, you know, my science doesn't really have anything to do with like why I don't think that there's a like some metaphysical divine agent that kicked off the universe or something.
okay, great. And can I ask you why you are having this life? Like
Well,
why?
I told you, if it's true, I want to believe it.
Okay, perfect. So you want to believe in God, but you haven't
If
found.
it's true, yeah, I want to believe true things.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Because we wouldn't be doing this if you didn't want to, and you were here for no reason. Let's just establish that.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. Great. So, can I ask whether you believe in good and evil?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, you believe there's something good, and there's good people, and then there's people that do evil things, bad things. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, the way I understand good and evil is like stuff that like aligns with my values or stuff that doesn't align with my values.
Perfect. And I assume you have good values. Would you consider
hope
yourself
so.
a good person?
I would hope so. Yeah.
Great. Do you know where these values came from?
Well, I mean, I don't know for certain, but like I would suspect that probably some of it came from just like being human, and like, you know, or human psychology is just a certain way. But also I imagine some of it came from like the way I was raised by my parents, you know, the environment I grew up in, the things I read, the school I went to, these kinds of things.
Okay. And for context, was your family all atheist? Do they not believe in anything, or were they?
My family was mildly religious.
Okay. Okay, perfect. And do you know who God, the God that I believe in is? The Christian God?
I'm familiar with the Christian God.
Okay. Have you read the Bible at any point? Or?
I've read the Hebrew Bible several times over.
Okay.
I have not read the Christian Bible in its entirety, but I've read big chunks of it.
So you've read what we know as sort of like the Old Testament side of things. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Do you believe like the beginning of the Hebrew Bible? What did you find was interesting about it?
I just think like it's a cool story, but I don't think it's true. Look, so Chromic, I do have to ask, are we going to get to an argument or evidence at some point? Because
yes, we're getting to that. We're getting to that.
All right,
worry.
well let's try to land the plane because this, I mean, it's not supposed to be an interview, right?
Okay. Yes. No. Of course. So you said this before as you were talking to another caller, but you said that the written history and the written record emerged like 6,000 years ago or so.
Yeah, it depends on how you're counting it, but like I think cuneiform was probably it was around like 5,000. Like we have stuff that looks like very much like writing from before that, but it's not as like obviously writing. It could have been like just pictographs or something like that. That's older than that.
Yes, of course. Now, if you go to the Hebrew Bible, which Christianity does come from, the belief in Judaism is just like a whole more like a sort of renewed
it's like
version of it.
It's like a sequel.
Yes, essentially. If you go to the Hebrew Bible, in the first book, the book of Genesis, it tells you a bunch of genealogy apart from the story of the creation. From that, you can surmise, because it tells you a lot of details, sort of how many years have passed from then up until now, because it goes throughout the whole Bible.
Yeah, you can try. And yeah, I mean, like it says it gets to like some period where, you know, it's like 6,000 years old or something like this, depending on who you ask. Sure.
Yes, and we know that the written record is around 6,000 years old.
Yeah, it's a little bit younger than that, but yeah.
Yeah, a little bit younger. Before that, we have also evidence that there was some sort of flood at some point.
Not really. I mean,
correct?
geologists don't really agree with you on that.
Well, I mean, there's been places where they found fishes on top of mountains where they shouldn't have been there.
That doesn't. Well,
How do you explain that?
So, with plate tectonics, right? So
Well, there are mountains.
So plate tectonics is how mountains form, and so you'll have like a sea. You'll have a something that used to be ocean down low, and then the plate tectonics. So you'll have like an oceanic plate or something like this, and then it runs up into a continental plate, or actually better yet, you have like an oceanic plate between two continental plates, and those two continental plates squeeze the oceanic plate up, and you end up with fish bones on the top of the mountain. Like, I mean, geologists have a good explanation from this, and they don't require a flood.
Okay, fine. Then let's move on from that, because clearly you have an answer for that. So that's fine. That's perfect.
By the way, like, I'm just really not inclined to take much of Genesis seriously, because like they're talking about like, yes, Adam lived to be 630 years old, and Methuselah lived to be 900. Like, humans don't live that long. It seems kind of It seems kind of silly.
That is from our modern perspective, right? Is from like, the current modern technology, what we know as humans living only up until barely 100 years.
Yeah. And so like we don't have any reason to think that it's possible for like humans without modern medicine to live to be 700 years old or whatever.
Of course. And I do agree. Looking at it from a realistic point of view, it wouldn't make sense, right? Some 900-year-old on a Bible, how would you believe that? But the way the Bible explains how all of these came to be and how we came to be to this point in time, it comes about the moment of creation, where you have the story of Adam and Eve and how they fell from God. And in order to understand sort of who God is, you also have to keep in mind that this is not a God that is the same as us. It is outside of the universe, outside of time. He's all powerful, all omniscient, all present, you know.
Right, but why should I think that thing exists?
That's what I'm saying. That is a what if, right? You can believe that there is no God, and that would be perfectly fine. But at the same time, we don't have proof as well that he exists, right? And we could sit here all day and try to discuss whether there is proof or not.
But is there like evidence at least, or like some sort of argument that
there is some evidence?
There
is some evidence out there.
Okay. Like
for instance, for Christians, there is evidence in the DNA as well.
What kind of evidence in DNA?
So it's really interesting because in the Bible, there's this thing that they use in Hebrew, and they call it Gamatria, where they use numbers to link to words and to letters. So you can sort of like change, like say a word and then change it into numbers, and they mean something.
So just as a quick question, so when do you think Gamatria started to be used by the ancient Hebrews?
I'm not sure.
So it was like maybe 100 years before Jesus was born.
Okay.
Whereas the Hebrew Bible was written hundreds of years before that. So like the Hebrew Bible was not written with Gamatria in use.
I know. This is something we only discovered recently, correct?
Well, no, I mean, like this has been known about for like
a few
thousands of years.
Yes.
But like the ancient Hebrews that were writing these texts were not using it.
Of course not.
Okay.
They didn't have the technology they would do. They didn't have the technology that many people after that did.
What do you mean it's just numbers. Like they don't need technology for that.
The knowledge.
Okay.
Yes.
But my point is that like I think that it's probably incorrect to try to infer any numeric coincidences from the Hebrew Bible if
Okay.
the authors of the Hebrew Bible weren't using it.
Okay. But why would the authors need to use it?
They didn't use it, is the point. So if anything that any coincidences that you find about Gamatria, or any similarities that you find relating a Hebrew word in the Bible, in Gamatria and DNA, that seems like it's us reading stuff into it rather than it being part of the intended message.
Right. But why would the writers, because we know that the Bible was written according to what happened, according to what the word of God was said, apparently, if we're going in that direction. Okay. So if what most of this was written with the influence of God, right? Take it with a grain of salt at the moment. You can believe it or not. This is a what if scenario. But if what was written was with the influence of God, and therefore it was the hand of God that made the contents of the Bible sort of relevant, then what makes you believe that it had anything to do with the Hebrews, that Gematria had anything to do with the Hebrews?
I mean, presumably the Hebrews were the people who wrote it.
Yes, the Hebrews were the people who wrote it because they were telling it a story. That's how history is made.
The Hebrews were also the people who came up with the Gamatria system. I mean, they actually were influenced by earlier groups like the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and the Greeks. But like, setting that aside, like the Hebrews came up with Gamatria as a way of talking about numbers, and the Hebrews also wrote the text. But the order implies that the way that they came up with sorry, let me rephrase. But the order of those two events happening seems like that you shouldn't use the Gamatria that they came up with to understand things that they weren't using Gamatria to write.
Right. That is if it was only on the hands of the Hebrews, though. We're talking about God because in this sense,
but did God write the Bible?
That's what I'm saying. God's knowledge is in the Bible. God designed things to be this way. That is the main reason why we're finding these coincidences, why we're finding this information as recent as today.
So, look, I understand that if you already believe in God, then you will see these numerical coincidences and be like, oh, that's a sign of God. But if I don't believe in God, and I think that this was just written by a bunch of ancient Hebrews 2,500 years ago, then why would I think that Gamatria is a useful way to interpret the writings from before Gamatria existed? Like, I can understand that it's compelling evidence for somebody who already believes in God, but for somebody who doesn't believe in God, like, it just doesn't do much.
Okay. So we'll move on from there because clearly you've won that part of the argument in that sense. Then we know that there's evidence of Jesus. We know that he existed.
Sure.
Would you agree? Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Do you know who Jesus was or why they say he died on the cross and was crucified?
Well, we don't really have any, really any accounts from the Romans as to why he was executed. What we have is that, he had to die for our sins and all of this stuff, as found in the Christian Bible, but there's not really like an account of, the actual, like, what law did he break, right? As the Romans were a people of law, so there would have been some law that he broke, some crime that he committed, and we don't really know what that was.
Well, in the Bible, it tells that what happened to Christ, because these are accounts of eyewitnesses, so we can
Are they?
take it as they are. They are.
Which ones?
The Gospels. So
Which
that would
Gospels?
be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They are accounts of eyewitnesses.
How do we know this?
How do we know this? Because several people can claim to it. There is literally historical accounts of when Jesus existed.
No, I mean, how do we know that they were written by eyewitnesses?
because these people existed.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John existed?
Yes.
How do we know? I think that we actually know that Matthew existed?
Matthew existed.
But how do we know that, like I mean, to be clear, these were not all apostles, first of all, right?
No. Some of them were people that knew the apostles.
Like Luke wasn't an apostle, right?
No,
He was just
Luke
a
wasn't
doctor.
an apostle. Mark wasn't an apostle.
Right, Mark was like the cousin of some guy who was an
And
apostle.
all of this historical.
So like these are so how are these eyewitnesses if these weren't even apostles?
No, Matthew was an apostle. John was an apostle.
So the question is how do we know that these are the people that actually wrote these things? And how do we know that these people were eyewitnesses?
Because the historical accounts are held in the church.
Which historical accounts?
The historical accounts that they were witnesses.
So like on what basis do we come to the conclusion that they were eyewitnesses, besides just people saying that they were eyewitnesses?
On what basis do we believe that evolution is evolution?
Well, we look for like DNA evidence, we look for anatomical evidence, we can do experiments in the laboratory that demonstrate evolution, we can make predictions.
How do you believe that history was made? How do we know that things happened when they happened?
How do I believe that history was made? I don't understand the question.
Yeah.
Like history is just a series of events that takes place. And then when it's in the past, we call it history. If you're asking how do we know that history is true, that like our standard account of history is true, I mean, a lot of it we kind of assume is true because it's plausible. It like is, you know, if we hear an account of like a baker who made some bread and sold some bread, like it doesn't take a miracle to believe that. That's just like a normal thing that we know happens today. So it's plausible that it happened in the past. But for a lot of history, we have like good theories and good explanations. But until we find archaeological evidence, they're like historical theories, right? Like they're not 100% confirmed, if you will.
Well, would you say the same in court with eyewitness statements?
So people often do. This is often a thing where people will question how credible an eyewitness is. They need to be able to prove that they were an eyewitness, right? And so like that's a thing that will happen in court. Absolutely.
Yes, but before technology, before the social boom of technology and machines and computers, and when information was widespread, before that, what did we rely on to know that, hey, this was history?
Well, I mean, we basically used historical, like ancient historians who recorded things, which is one of the reasons why I think that it's quite plausible that Jesus existed, because we have historical, like historians like Josephus who write about Jesus existing, but we don't have historians writing about the apostles or writing about these eyewitnesses. We don't have historians of these.
There are accounts of that Jesus indeed existed and that he had people following him.
Well, yeah, there are accounts that I agree that there are accounts of that Jesus had people following him. What I'm saying is that we don't have accounts for these specific apostles.
No, but how would you then explain how these writings have been preserved to this extent?
What do you mean? I mean, it's easy for writings to be preserved. Lots of false writings are preserved.
Like which ones?
The Iliad? I imagine that you don't think have you read the Iliad by Homer?
No.
What part of the world are you from, by the way?
I am from Peru.
Oh, okay. So the Iliad, do you know who Homer is?
Yes.
Okay, so the Iliad is one of Homer's stories. It depicts a perhaps mythological battle between the Mycenaean Greeks and the Trojans. You have a whole bunch of like Greek warriors, and they go fight like a 10-year siege like against Troy, and like we know that Troy existed now because an ancient city of Troy was discovered in the 1800s. But like in the story, we have like Athena descending to the battlefield and like assisting the Greeks, and we have like Achilles, who is indestructible in all places except his heel, hence the name Achilles' heel. We have like all of these like miraculous and supernatural things happening, and like clearly like you and I don't think that actually happened, right? So like that story is far older than the Christian Bible, and it's been preserved.
Yes, I agree.
But it's not true.
Yes. That's true. But that's not the same for the Bible.
Well,
because there is
all I'm
historical
saying is-
evidence
all I'm
for
saying
a
is that-
lot of the points on the Bible.
All I'm saying is that just because a text was preserved doesn't mean that it's true.
Of course, we can agree on that.
So that's the only reason I brought that up. My point is
Okay,
that like
perfect.
we have these texts from from apparently anonymous but named sources. The traditional names are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We also have a whole bunch of epistles. We don't really have any like supporting evidence that these were actually written by the people that they're named after. Rather, we have like some vibes. So I think Luke was a physician, right? And the reason why Luke was named Luke was because the text of Luke uses slightly different language that is in some sense like more medical. Like it's a little bit more of a medical language. And so people are like, well, that sounds like a doctor wrote it. And there is this one doctor who knew a guy who knew Jesus. So probably it was that guy who wrote it. It was probably that guy who knew a guy who knew Jesus that wrote it because it sounds sort of medical. But like that's not particularly good evidence at all that it was actually written by Luke. So all I'm saying is that like we have these stories, and those stories are not particularly, in my view, not particularly reliable. And so why should I think that the miracles that are brought up in these stories, why should I think that they're true any more than the miracles or the supernatural things that happened in the Odyssey or in the Iliad?
Would you think that they're true if they happen to you?
Probably,
Person?
but I don't think that they happened to me.
Okay. If you saw them with your own eyes, would you believe?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So it's just a lack of factual evidence.
Yeah.
Of hard proof that you're missing from me convincing you to believe in God.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I tell you that there is no evidence that I could bring up that you would not be able to disprove using science or using all the knowledge that we have today, would you still be seeking to believe in God?
If it's real. But it does make me skeptical. If every time somebody brings up like a piece of evidence for like the flood or the age of the earth or the resurrection, and every single time these can be like pretty easily dismantled, it makes me think that like if it's the case that it were true, then we should be able to find evidence for it that is not easily dismantled. But if it were false, then we would expect it to be easily dismantled for every single piece of supposed evidence that is brought up. So the fact that it does seem so easy to actually just, look into these things and figure out, oh, that's not true and here's why, it makes me think that it's just not, that it's probably just not true. That said, if it is true, I want to know it.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that it's true based on my belief, but you could argue that it's not true based on my belief because I have no evidence to present you with it.
Okay.
In the same space, I could tell you that the Bible has a lot of evidence to present by itself if you read into it.
But the Bible is the claim, isn't it? Like the Bible can't be the evidence if it's also the claim.
It can be the evidence.
That would be like, look, if my claim, suppose that I came up to you and I said, I am God reincarnated, right? And then you say, okay, well, what's the evidence? And I said, well, I said it, and I'm God reincarnated. Well, like, that's kind of a problem because that's a circle. You should only believe it if it's true. And the only reason that you should believe it is because I'm telling you it's true. And so you're doing the same thing with the Bible, right? The Bible has a whole bunch of claims in it. It can't also be the evidence for those claims.
Well, the evidence is in history.
Well, that's the question. Where is the historical evidence?
It's everywhere in the Bible. It's in the Hebrew Bible.
No, but hold on. Look, where is the historical evidence for the claims being made in the Bible? If you then point to the Bible, you're just pointing to the claims again, not to the evidence of the claims.
Well, I don't know.
It's hard. It's hard
Yeah,
because
it's
there's
hard.
not really
It's hard.
there's not really any evidence that like any of these supernatural things happened.
I mean, there is evidence out there, I'm sure, but there's also no way I can prove it to you because I'm not that learned on the side of historical evidence. So I can't bring out all the historical evidence
That's fair.
of it.
Look, that's fair. I don't expect everybody to be an expert. Chromic, is there anything else you want to talk about before I let you go?
Yes, of course. My main thing was you've read the Hebrew Bible. Now you clearly want to know why people believe in God and why you should believe in God. My best advice for you would be to read the Gospels.
So I started them, and look, I hate to be that guy, but they're like so boring. I downloaded the app, I like started reading, and I'm like, oh, I'd so much rather not do this. It's so boring.
Which one did you start? Did you start Matthew?
Yeah, I started with Matthew.
Yeah, Matthew's a bunch of genealogy, which in
I
part
got past
explains...
that. I even got past that. And like, I was just like, it's just... Like, look,
Yeah,
maybe I'm TikTok brained. Maybe I need like somebody to make like the Bible in like 30 different parts in like 3-minute videos or something. But it's just so boring.
No, I get it. It's a hard book to get into. And it's full of metaphors and things that you have to interpret, which is why we can sit here all day and discuss whether it's real or it's not real. As a book in itself, I can tell you, you can read Matthew. I wouldn't read it first, personally. I would read John first.
But John is
and
the
then
crazy
Matthew.
one. I mean, like, I'll probably grant you, John is probably the most interesting of the Gospels. Like, by the way, I am familiar with the Gospels. I'm familiar with the epistles. I just haven't read them through in their entirety. I know that John is definitely the crazy one, and it might be the most interesting one. But like, I don't know. Is that really the place that you want me to start? By the way, the strange thing is like I did get through to the end of Matthew. By the way, and like, you know, in Matthew, there's like a part where dead people rise from the dead and then wander around Jerusalem after Jesus is crucified. Like, why should I? Like, that's crazy talk. Why should I think that happened?
Right? It's crazy. Why would that happen?
No. Why should I like that is? It's completely unreasonable to think that that's true.
Yes, because we've never seen that here in modern society.
Well, it's not
That's
even
never
that.
happened.
It's like, if that happened in real life, we should have more than one account of it, right? We should have like they wandered. It doesn't just say, oh, they got up and wandered around. It says that they got up and wandered around and interacted with the people of Jerusalem. So like, why didn't anybody else talk about this?
I don't know. That's something I can't answer.
It probably, like, if it really happened, they would have talked about it.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
When crazy stuff happens like that, people like, do you know how many eclipses there have been that have been mentioned simultaneously across the historical record all over the world? Because eclipses are like kind of weird. If just like dozens or hundreds of people rose from the dead and started wandering around talking to people, that would have been like the biggest news. Like, people would have written about it, but people didn't write about it. So why didn't it happen?
But then if you look at history, though, that was 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And in between that, we have the Dark Ages, where lots and lots of historical evidence was lost.
But like, look, this would have been the best. This would have been the best case for Jesus's resurrection, right? And we have Jesus's resurrection being preserved. Like, we have all of the Gospels being preserved. So if it like it wasn't really the Dark Ages, it's not really called that anymore, because it wasn't the Dark Ages. It was just like the end of the Roman Empire. There was still a lot of stuff happening, and so but the church was in charge. And so why would the church not preserve the best possible evidence, the best imaginable evidence for the actual miracle that was Jesus's resurrection?
Well, for me to explain that to you, I would have to first explain what was before, because we know Jesus was a Jew, and what was sort of in power at the time were the Pharisees, and
the Romans.
Rome was in power, but the Pharisees, religion-wise, it was the Pharisees, the Jews. Okay,
Yeah.
so the Pharisees were people that followed the rules and were sticklers to the rules, and to them, Jesus was a blasphemer.
Yeah.
And you can read that in the Bible. It says it in the Bible.
Obviously, but like,
it
look,
literally...
There were Romans in the area too, and the Romans would have recorded this.
Yeah,
The
that's
Jews
true.
would have recorded this. They would have been like, oh, it's the end of days. Like, why are there zombies wandering around? Like, everybody would have recorded this. Everybody would have written this down.
Mm-hmm. I can't
And-
give you a straight answer for that because even I don't know.
That's
To
fair.
this point, I'm still researching and finding my own conclusions as well, because up until recently, I still doubted God.
That's fair.
I have my own story for that, but I'm not going to get into that.
Well, yeah,
But-
I'm not going to ask you of it. Look, I should probably let
Yeah.
you go because you've been on for a while, but thank you so much for being here, Chromic. I
Yes,
do
that's
appreciate
fine.
you.
No worries.
Have a good one.
Thank you as well. It was lovely talking to you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm a little bit surprised that she's a young earther because she's Peruvian, I believe is what she said, and I don't think that that Peruvian or that young earth is particularly common outside of the US, but maybe I'm just super wrong about that. It was at least an interesting conversation. All right, let's read some super chats, and then we will move on to the next guest. From just some guy with the $5, she realized her plan fell apart as soon as you answered the flood question and just refused to concede. That was a waste of time. I mean, look, I think it's worthwhile. People often don't like how quickly I move through topics and I let people kind of direct the topics, and I think that it's generally pretty. Some people like, people like Ian or Justin to drill people on things, and that's valuable. But I also think it's probably valuable to show people that you can bring up however many topics as you want. There's answers for all of these questions, and I think that that's at some point valuable. From Nectu with the $6.16, do you think they could have meant months old instead of years old for people like Methuselah in the Bible? 900 months old would make him 75 years old. I mean, maybe, but I kind of doubt it. If you look at the ancient Sumerian kings lists, they also say that XYZ king reigned for 10,000 years, and then as you get closer to the time of writing, those years or those lengths of reign get shorter and shorter. From Christopher Sanford with the £5, feels like this caller is asking questions just to try to find something you don't have an expertise in and try to get an argument from ignorance. Gotcha. Probably. But even if that happened, I'm generally pretty good at avoiding that pitfall. From Grimmy with the $5, do your guests understand what historical fiction is? A lot of people don't, and that's okay. All right. Let us talk to our next guest. Oh, by the way, before I move on to the next guest, I want to shill myself for a moment. First, if you're 18 years or older, make sure that you go and join the Discord server. It's a good way to get announcements from me about when I'm live streaming, when I post new videos, when I'm on other people's live streams, when the Unapologetic show is running. It's also a good place to talk with cross-platform. If you're a TikToker, you can talk with the YouTubers and vice versa. And so if you do want to join, go to discord.gg/drblitz. It's just discord.gg/drblitz. It's a fun and cool place to be. We have a great admin who's been improving the server significantly, making it appear a lot prettier, have a lot more fun things going on, so hop on by. Second thing, I have a list of debate notes that I often refer to. They have a bunch of useful links in them that I use frequently when I am doing these debates. It's kind of like a cheat sheet that I made for myself. It's not like a script, it's just kind of like a list of facts and stuff that it has a bunch of nice references. And if you want access to those debate notes, I've made them available, but only to members. It's like $4 or $5 a month on YouTube. And if you also become a member, you also get access to the emojis and stuff, which are fun. And speaking of the devil herself, Carissa Wieland just sent 20 Dr. Blitz Debunks gift memberships. So 20 people just got access to the emojis and the debate notes, which, if you're getting into debates with family or friends, or if you're doing debates online, they can be handy if there's something that you're interested in, or if you just want to see where the arguments are coming from or see where the sources are coming from. Anyway, let's move on to the next guest. Thank you so much for Carissa, and let's talk to Charlie. Germs Rosselino just sent 10 Dr. Blitz gift memberships. That's on the other account. Both of them are totally valid. You get access to the same things on both accounts. But it's like $4 or $5 a month on either at Blitz PhD on YouTube, or it's like at Dr. Blitz Debunks on YouTube. Either one. Become a member either way, vertical or horizontal. Anyway, Charlie, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Blitz? So
Uh,
good to be able to talk to you, man.
Likewise. Charlie, do you believe in a god?
I do. Having said that, before you ask me, I don't believe in the religious God, though. And
Okay, that's fine. So then what's the evidence for the god that you believe in?
well, here's the thing. I've heard so many people try to give you evidence, let's say, or empirical evidence, or an objective opinion of why they believe in God. The truth of the matter is that there's no empirical evidence that there is a God. So if we're going to be objective, then we have to recognize the fact that there is no empirical evidence. As far as we know, there is a God.
So then why should I believe in a god then?
Well, God is a very subjective experience, and most of the times it's a very personal experience.
Okay,
See,
but I haven't had such a personal experience, so why should I believe in a god?
Exactly. And why haven't? Can I ask you a question? Do you believe there's meaning? There's
Sure.
a meaning to your life?
I don't think that there's like some objective divine meaning, but I definitely assign my own meaning.
What meaning would that be?
Well, I don't want to tell you what makes my life meaningful.
Well,
that's deeply personal.
Well, see, that's the thing about God, because it's very deeply personal.
Okay.
And we cannot talk about God without getting into our very personal self-meaning about our experience of our lives. You are expecting someone to give you an objective evidence about God, but there isn't.
Okay, so you don't think that there's evidence. Are there any arguments for the existence of God?
Now I can go on and talk about arguments.
Okay, please offer me an argument.
And the first argument I can tell you is that even though science has done amazing things for us, and I think and I believe that knowledge it is a way to get to know God in a better way. My argument would that be that see, humans, we always try to find meaning in our lives. That's if we see and go back to history, we're gonna find that religion has been just a tool to try to find meaning in and I think it's not the right way to do it. But my argument and my main argument that I can give you is something that I cannot really understand how that works, and that's the fact that.
So wait, so what's the argument? The argument is, why are we searching for meaning?
Why?
Well, no. What's the argument?
The argument is the need that we have to find connection.
So the argument is that we have to find connection, and then how do you go from that to God?
How do I go? Well, the thing is, if we stick to the fact that we are all just created by chance and pure coincidence with no meaning or no real purpose, that doesn't really make any sense, does it?
So your argument is naturalism doesn't make sense, therefore God?
Can you repeat that again?
Naturalism doesn't make sense, therefore God?
No, it does make sense. I mean, it makes sense not in the sense that religion has told us to make sense, but it makes sense that our experience, our journey here, it is an experience of learning. Now, you are trying to find an argument that is going to convince you or give you just to prove whether there's a God or not. And my argument to you is, what about love?
I think love is a thing that happens when certain external stimuli lead to certain internal chemical reactions.
Now, you believe that, right? Because there's no real explanation or scientific explanation about why or how.
Well, I mean, like, for example, if you injected somebody's brain with oxytocin, like, they're definitely going to experience love.
Yeah, you're telling me how the brain
So, like, there's
works,
definitely, like,
right?
a causal relationship there.
Well, yeah, you're just telling me. Science know, how does brain react to certain stimulations, and we know that. I mean, we know how our brain works, but we don't know where love comes from or why we need
love comes from chemicals.
You believe that? Do you have any
Yeah.
proof that is the case?
I mean, you can inject somebody with oxytocin and then they will feel love.
No. You're just talking
No.
about stimulation and emotion.
Have I considered nuh-uh?
Now, you're telling
I
me
have
that...
not. I never considered that.
Are you telling me that when a baby is born and have such a deep connection with their father or their mother, it's just what is that? That's not what love is.
It's I mean, it's oxytocin, serotonin, like endorphins. Like there's a whole bunch of different chemicals that make people feel certain ways.
Okay, so for you, it's just a reaction, right? It's a chemical reaction. It's a biological reaction. There's no true or actual profound meaning to our lives or the need that we have to make connection with other people.
So is there an argument or?
Well, that was my argument. I just realized something, that there is no way anyone is going to convince you there is a God.
Okay.
Right? There's no way.
I mean, if that's what you think, thanks for being here. From Tim Davidson with the $2, oxytocin causes love. What does oxymoron cause? Oh, that's a great question. It's a brilliant question. All right, let's talk to, it's Tony Edwards. It's Tony Edwards. How's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Tony, do you believe in a God?
So I'm kind of more on the fence about it. I'm more of in between. Like, I want to believe in a higher power, and I have certain questions about it that I just don't know how to answer.
So
it's arguments in my own head that make it hard for me to know whether or not.
Okay, but are those arguments convincing to you?
Because like, yes, it makes sense to me in a way that it convinces me lightly. But then I'm like, but what if it doesn't make sense? What if
go ahead. What are the arguments?
What if I'm just misunderstanding?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the arguments is like, so what are all the neurons and stuff that you're talking about in the brain? I'm a younger man, not fully educated on all the neurons and protons and everything that goes in the brain, but it's a very advanced system, like extremely advanced, correct?
Yeah, it's advanced isn't the word I would use. I would use complicated.
What are the chances that they'll just...
I would use the word complicated.
Complicated?
Yeah, but sure, we can say advanced. So what's the question?
Yeah. So my question that I'm going for is, how did something so complicated just accidentally happen?
Well, it's
like just happen to happen. Like, what are the chances of that happening?
It's not particularly low, given that evolution is a process that is directed accidents, right? So evolution is really good at filtering out bad designs and, finding the ones that are good enough. And our brain was good enough. It's definitely not perfect, as is evidenced by the fact that there are lots of people who have severe, developmental disabilities. There are lots of people who, in fact, literally every human has cognitive biases. Our brain is like wildly sensitive to even like the lightest tap. It'll just randomly bleed and then you'll die. Like, it's not perfect, but if you have a trillion accidents over the course of 2.5 or 3 billion years, and only the good accidents are kept, it seems plausible that you would end up with where we are.
Okay, that does help make more sense of that argument for me. One of the biggest issues that I run into is, like, I was kind of born into Christianity, so like my parents took me to church, and then were like, no, this is what you believe.
Yeah.
And from like every preacher that I've had, like, that I've asked questions to, it's been a big like, well, it's faith-based. Like, you're not going to find the proof that you want because it's faith-based. You just have to have faith.
Yeah, so depending on what kind of education people get, like, from what I've heard is that if you go to like a well-respected seminary, which is like, you know, it's like a Bible masters. If you go to a well-respected seminary, then people will actually have like good answers to a lot of these hard questions, or they'll be thoughtful about them. But if you just go to like a Bible thumping cemetery, or not cemetery, a seminary, Bible thumping seminary, or if you just have like some random like pastor who's never actually went to, you know, Bible college or seminary or whatever, then they're not going to have good answers for these questions, because these questions are hard and they undermine what they believe. So they'll just kind of rely on like, oh, it's faith. We don't have an answer for this, and it's kind of cop out.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I know it wasn't really going
You're
towards the
No, you're
convince
good.
you or anything. It just kind of helped me figure out what I.
Okay. Well,
Thank
you're
you so
fine.
much.
Thanks for being here, Tony. Take care. All right, we have a $10 super
Thank you
chat
so
from
much.
Dr. Fudge. In all definitions of the term, meaning is created by us. Lacking a transcendental component in no way delegitimizes our experiences. We'll never understand why some people seem put off by this. Yeah, I mean, like, does it even make sense to say that somebody else can give you meaning? Like, meaning is something that you find valuable. I don't think somebody else can make you find something valuable, right? All right, let's talk to Oob.
Good afternoon, Dr. Blitz.
Oob, how's
You're
it going?
a legend.
Well, thank you.
I'm good.
Oob.
You're a legend. It's an honor to debate with you.
Do you believe in God, Oob?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what kind of God do you believe in?
A foundational existence. So something that all contingent things rest upon to exist.
Okay. Yeah, so what's the argument for it existing?
Okay, so can we do the premise approach?
Sure thing, yeah. Let me pull up a notepad.
Okay. Premise 1, we exist.
One sec, I'm just going to display this for everybody to see, so then we can be super clear. Okay. Premise 1, we exist. Okay. So far, so
And
good.
I would just like to point out to your audience that you helped me with that, so thank you. We exist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so premise 2, existence is the presence of anything at all.
Anything at all. Okay.
I'm not familiar with how this premise argument works. Do you stop and debate when you disagree with a premise?
You can just lay out all of the premises if you want, and then we can talk about them.
Okay, premise 3. We are conscious beings.
Mm-hmm.
Premise 4. Everything observable is contingent.
Okay.
Premise 5. Contingent things cannot ultimately explain their own existence.
Okay.
You type fast. Premise 6. An infinite chain of contingent explanations does not remove the need for a foundation.
Okie dokie.
Okay, it sounds like you disagree with it, but I'll keep going. Therefore, existence itself must rest on something non-contingent or necessary.
Okay, is that the argument?
2 more. Wait, 3. Three more. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Was that premise 7 you read? I
wrote C1 because you started with therefore, which means that it's some kind of conclusion that you're drawing from the previous premises.
Okay, fair enough. Okay then. Premise 8. A non-contingent foundation must be eternal.
Contingent? How do you spell this? Contingent foundation must be eternal?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yes. P9. Consciousness exists within reality and is capable of intentional causation.
Okay.
Okay, got one more premise and then the conclusion. If consciousness exists at all, then reality is capable of producing intentional causation.
Okay.
So my conclusion is, therefore, it is reasonable to conclude that existence rests on an eternal, non-contingent foundation, and it is at least plausible that this foundation is capable of intentional causation. This foundational reality is what theists refer to as God. Just for the chat, yes, I use ChatGPT to help me with my argument.
Okay, so first, this, just to be clear, this is not a valid argument.
Okay.
Like this does not follow from the previous premises. Like this is like, it might be able to be tied in. You might be able to like rewrite it and like add like 20 extra premises to make it valid. But like, even if we just get to, like, we can just ignore everything after C1.
Okay,
and we can just like, because like that, if we can't even get to C1, then we can't, there's not much to do. So what you want is existence itself must rest on something non-contingent. Okay. Yes. So P3 is irrelevant. I'm just going to put this here to, like, it's irrelevant for getting to C1. P1.
Wait, it's irrelevant to get into C1. If we are not conscious, how do we know we exist?
I mean, maybe you could use P3 to like reinforce P1, but P1 is just a premise. So you don't like, I grant that we exist. We don't need P3. It doesn't really help us get to C1 at all.
Okay, fair enough.
Probably by P4, you probably don't mean everything observable, because then that weakens the argument. You probably want everything is contingent, right? Or
yes,
actually, you actually don't want everything as contingent. You want like some things are contingent.
I recently learned from like one of your friends that there's two types of meanings to contingent, but it doesn't matter.
So by the way, this is just a definition, so we can get rid of that too. That's all you mean by existence. So you say we exist. And then we say everything observable is contingent. So then then this implies that, you know, humans are observable. So we are contingent. And then then we have P5, contingent things cannot ultimately explain their own existence. This is a premise that we'll probably have to talk about. Then you say P6, an infinite chain of contingent explanations does not remove the need for a foundation. We'll also probably need to talk about this. And then your conclusion is existence itself must rest on something non-contingent. So
I'm happy with that.
Your argument is probably closer to something like this. Stuff exists. Stuff is contingent. A contingent thing requires an explanation. P4, an infinite chain of contingent explanations does not itself remove the need for a foundation. P5, if everything has an explanation, then it cannot be an infinite chain of contingent explanations. Conclusion. And then we say P6, everything does have an explanation. Therefore, conclusion, the explanation of everything is not an infinite chain of contingent explanations. You probably want something like this. This is probably the closest thing that we're going to get to a valid argument.
I want to add in that an infinite chain of contingent things doesn't remove the need for a foundational.
That's P4.
Source. Okay, cool. All right then.
So like, this is probably the closest thing that you're going to get to an argument.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
So P1 is just a proposition, which is fine. P2 is just a proposition, which is fine. There is a tying proposition here, which can make this valid. P3 is this is just a definition of what it means for something to be contingent.
Sorry, can you make it smaller, please? I can't see the whole sentence. I just want to read it from your screen.
Sorry, yeah, I can do that. There you go.
Thank you.
So this is just what you mean by a contingent thing. So I'm actually just going to substitute that in here, and we can get rid of P3. So we say stuff is contingent, meaning it requires an explanation.
Yeah. Cool.
And then we can get rid of P3. We're just going to simplify this down we're going to boil it down to the simplest possible argument we can that still maintains the thing that you're getting at. And then we say,
this is what God is about. God is about simplicity.
And then we say that an infinite chain of contingent explanations does not itself remove the need for a foundation. Yes. So we'll rewrite this and we'll just say, well, actually, so by this, do you mean that an infinite chain of contingent explanations itself needs an explanation?
It needs something there for it to exist and sustain itself in the first place.
So hold on. So there's multiple things happening here. And this is where contingency arguments fall. Contingency arguments fail when people start conflating like ontological groundings and explanations and causes, because these are not all the same thing. And the reason I say that is because we would say that an ontological grounding, or like sometimes called by theists a hierarchical cause, is not an explanatory cause, right? So grounding relations, these are not explanatory relations. They don't explain why it is this way rather than that way. They are just necessary for the subsequent thing to exist, but they're not themselves explanations. So the statement about foundations here, this statement about foundations is unrelated to the idea of contingency as you've defined it, because contingency as you've defined it is about explanation, whereas foundation is not about explanation. It's about sustaining or something like that.
Yes. So, but that takes us back to P1. We exist. So
right, but that's unrelated. My critique is that P2 and P3 are unrelated to each other, and then P2 and P3 are unrelated to each other, and then you use premise 2 to conclude that there are contingent things that need explanations, but P3 is only applies to hierarchical causation, not explanations. So you're trying to use P3 to justify why you can't have an infinite chain of contingent things, but P3 doesn't talk about contingent things. This business of a foundation is not an explanation.
So for things to exist, for something to exist, so we exist and we observe an contingency regression. Me and you agree that it's infinite.
So by contingency, when you say that something is contingent, do you only mean that it requires explanation for why it's this way rather than that way?
So yes, I mean always. So my definition, look. Can I just explain so you know how I understand? Yeah, okay,
because we're gonna have to rewrite P3. Go ahead.
Okay, so contingent means something depending on something.
Okay, so you don't mean it requires an explanation, meaning it depends on something else.
But whatever it's contingent from does explain why it's there. That's what I mean by contingency. It is.
But no, those two things aren't the same thing, right? Like for example, I have this this phone holder thing. I've been playing with it, and here's this is where I keep a portable microphone. Now, there is a dependency relation on why that explains how this phone holder thing is being held up. What is sustaining it in its location? Well, it's this thing. If this thing weren't here, this thing would fall. If my hand weren't here, then this thing would fall. And so there's a sustained dependency relation there. But that doesn't explain why this is here rather than here. It doesn't explain why this exists at all. It's just a sort of ongoing causal relationship. It's not explanatory at all, right? Okay. Just to give a perhaps more explicit example, or I suppose more abstract example. If I say that if I define integers as sets, this is mathematical stuff. If I say that an integer is just what we call an integer is just a specific kind of set, then it's the case that in order for integers to exist, sets have to exist. But that doesn't mean that sets somehow explain why integers exist. This is sort of just a definitional thing, or rather some sort of a part-whole relationship. It's not at all some sort of explanation for why it's this way rather than that way. So, and this is what I meant by contingency arguments falling in this regard exactly. It's because people will often conflate explanations with causes, with groundings, and those three things are not the same thing.
So okay, I'm not going to debate in this. I'll just educate myself. So what you're saying is contingency. Wait, say that again. What's the three things that's different?
So there's causes, so there's temporal causes. These are I run into the car, and then the car, I smash my car into another car, and the person gets injured. That's a temporal cause. And then there's an explanation, which temporal causations can be explanations, and then there's groundings. So there's causes, which can be explanations. They don't have to be explanations. There's explanations, which explain why a thing is. They give you some sort of reason to understand why it's this way rather than that way. And then there's that's what an explanation is. And then there's groundings, which is just like, it could be like a part whole relationship, or like some sort of compositional thing, or it could be like a sustaining relation or something like this. And these are just different things.
Okay, cool. All right then. So I will leave it there then. I will do more research on the difference between causes, explanation, and grounding. I respect you as a doctor, a published scientist. I want to respect the debate etiquette. So
I appreciate that.
hopefully you rise me back up in the future.
Yeah, thanks for being here,
Dr.
Oob.
Blitz.
Take care. Hey, well, bro was willing to learn. All right, we have some super chats, and we'll bring on another guest. From No One Besides, with the $5, are you for, against, indifferent to a listener leaving info about your streams around a coffee shop frequented by Christians? Go ahead, I guess. I guess I'm pretty indifferent to it. I don't know if it'll have any effects, but from Tim Davidson with the $5, evolution. If it works, it Fs. If it works, it Fs and makes more. If it doesn't work, it dies. It looks designed because the mistake died, deleted, no more. Yeah, that's the point. And from Chris RPG with the $2, wait, isn't energy not ultimately contingent? Energy is not like a substance, so it's not even clear if it makes sense to say that energy is the kind of thing that can be contingent, because it's like a number, right? All right, let's bring up our next guest. Let's talk to Raw Throttle. Throttle, how's it going?
Good day. How are you?
I'm doing all right, but it sounds like you have some pretty serious background noise. So if you, and like echo, so if you could cancel that out somehow.
Hold on. 2 seconds. All right, how is it now?
I think it's better. So that's good.
Is it better?
Yeah, I think so. So,
I'm not
Throttle, do you believe in a God?
Is it called agnostic? I'm kind of just in between, you know what I mean?
Well, that's great, but I'm really looking to talk to people who do believe in God, because if you're agnostic, then you can't even convince yourself, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think you're very intelligent. I think you have a good head on your shoulders. I think I know you're stating very good facts, and I don't know. I just kind of wanted to.
So Throttle, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, but that's not what the live stream's for. Those are things that you can definitely say in the comments. But I appreciate it regardless. All right, let us talk to Carlin.
Hey, how's it going?
Or is it Carl Insights or Carlin Sights?
Carl.
Okay,
Yeah.
Carl. Great, Carl. Do you believe in a God?
Yes.
Okay, and which one would that be, just so I don't make any bad assumptions?
I'm a Christian, but I would say you probably don't have to go straight there. Like, you could try to prove the existence of a God to begin with, something that would create the world.
Okay. Yeah, so what's the argument for such a thing?
I do not have much time, I'll say that up front.
That's fine.
Also, not a great debater or whatnot, but I was having fun listening to you earlier today. This is a very long live stream.
Well, we've been live for less than 3 hours, so... Anyway, so what's the argument?
Yeah, you said something that made me curious about the universe being eternal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always led to believe that entropy is a law of science and thermodynamics. I was curious how that works.
Yeah, I mean,
I always thought it was fairly well agreed on that the universe had some type of a beginning.
It's just not anymore. Like, it may have been 40 years ago, but like we have a lot better understanding and a lot more confusion about entropy to begin with now than we did prior to the 80s. So yeah, I mean, like, there's something that's really tricky about how one even defines the entropy of an entire universe. I mean, like, entropy, like the second law of thermodynamics, which is what you're referring to, absolutely is totally reasonable for like any experiments that we do on Earth. But that's because there's like this notion of like you have a system and it's isolated from its external environment. You have energy coming in, energy coming out, all of this stuff. And so you can talk about like the entropy in like a well-defined way. But it's not clear at all how we can talk about the entropy of an entire universe. It's not clear at all how gravity relates to entropy. It's not clear at all whether or not entropy is well defined in like a unique way for an entire universe, it's not clear that the entropy of the universe, if it is well defined, is even finite. So there's just a lot of things that are a lot of kind of assumptions, or that's not the word, a lot of conclusions that people came to by trying to apply the second law of thermodynamics to the universe that were far too hasty.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well then, to be honest, I'm probably not the right guy to talk, because if I'm going by things that I can observe and have heard about, something that goes beyond, entropy I can observe and things happening all the time, every day around me, and if we're saying that does not apply, then it probably won't work well. But I had a few other things I was curious about. So if the universe would be eternal, what would be the purpose, or why would an eternal universe, what would be the cause of it evolving life?
Well,
are
you asking like what, like,
more what I'm coming from this?
Are you asking like why, or are you asking like how?
It boggles my mind to get a little bit to think, okay, so there's this eternal thing, and then all of a sudden...
Well, to be clear, by the way, I'm not like 100% sold on the universe being eternal. I just think that it's like a possibility that we have to consider.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fine. I was just very intrigued by it.
I mean, like, even if the universe is eternal, like, that doesn't mean that we can't have like a well-defined moment where the Big Bang happened 13.8 billion years ago. There just could have been stuff before that. And so, like 13.8 billion years ago, life emerged on Earth 4 billion years ago. So, it took about 9 billion-ish years for life to kick off, at least on Earth. And that seems like a plausible timeline, because you got to make all of the elements first. And in order to make all the elements, you have to have several generations of stars, and you have to have galaxies form where you can have coalescence of gas clouds and stuff like that. So it doesn't seem like so far-fetched to think that, like, yeah, like at least under a naturalistic view, it's totally reasonable to think that even if the universe is eternal, life would have arisen in our universe when it did, in the way that it did.
Yeah, so one of the things I was wondering about is if the universe could be eternal, and it in and of itself could create is the wrong word, but end up with what we have here, which is pretty amazing. You see a lot of stuff that's very complicated and complex.
Yeah.
Stuff that at least has the appearance of purpose. If the universe could do that and it is eternal, isn't that a large part of the definition of what most people would agree that a god is? And
well, no, I don't think so.
One be easier to believe in than the other?
I would think that what most people mean by a god, at least most people in the West, they mean something like a personal being that like has some sort of identity, has a will, has desires, has, knowledge, and that this god is something that like created the universe, right? But like if we just take the universe to just be like a thing that exists and it's made of stuff, it's like made of particles and fields and whatever, then it's really missing the critical ingredients of being personal, of having a mind, of having knowledge, of having beliefs or wills, etc. So it's just not really in the same category of things.
So if someone were to propose a god that was impersonal but was eternal, had the power to create the universe, how would that differ from believing in a universe that in some way or another can also...
Well, if it's not personal, then I just don't know how it's a god.
True. But can you argue that in different steps, though? Like, first believe, okay, so if you could argue that there is something eternal, something that has the ability to create and start is the wrong word for eternal. Yeah, I just was really curious about the idea of the universe being eternal and how that compares to the idea of a god, because eternal, I thought, was one of the defining characteristics of God.
I mean, like,
but
often when people say God is eternal, what they mean is God is timeless. Not that it's eternal. They think that God is like outside time or something like this. Which the universe definitely, I mean, it depends on how you define it. In some sense, the universe kind of can't be timeless because it's the thing that has time. On the other hand, it's not like within time. It's like it is time. So, but this is all to say, it's not even clear to me that the universe is eternal. It might be, but I don't think that I think that whether or not the universe is eternal, I still don't think that there's a particularly good argument for God.
All right. Like I said, I don't have much time. I do have one more question though.
Yeah, sure.
And I guess you could call this an argument. Do you believe that we have the ability to make decisions, and decisions, not just decisions, but decisions that may go against our self-interest, like sacrificial decisions?
I mean, it's not really like an opinion question. Like, people do it, right?
Correct. So how would evolution account for something like that? Or I shouldn't say evolution, like there could be evolution in different ways, but how would a completely naturalistic process, unguided, account for the ability to make a decision that, you were talking about evolution in the process, natural selection.
Mm-hmm.
This cuts against that.
Not really. I mean, we see it in other.
If you make a decision to die for a different person or something.
I mean, we see like ants do this all the time. Like, ants will sacrifice themselves, and bees will do this too. They will sting you, which will lead to their death, to protect their hive from invasion, right? When you are a social species, when you're a social species like humans are, we prioritize not just ourselves, but also our family and our community, because if our family and our community survives, then that means that at least part of our genes will be passed down.
And I guess that's where I'm confused as to how being a social species makes sense from a...
Because it's an effective survival trait. So look, evolution is not about survival of the individual, it's about survival of the gene, right? And if, like, my brother and I share a lot of genes in common.
For the gene to survive, where would that motivation come from? Like, why should an individual care about the survival of someone else just because they have the same genes?
So we are driven, at least as a social species, this is one of our methods that we use to propagate our genes, is we are driven to make sure that our genes are spread as wide as we can. Now, if we weren't a social species, what that would mean is that we would just try to spread our own genes, like the genes that are in our body explicitly. It doesn't matter if some relative of ours has those genes. If we're not a social species, we don't care about our relatives. We only care about, ourselves, because if we manage to pass on, if we manage to reproduce, then all of our genes get passed on. However, there's another survival strategy where it's like, look, I share a lot of genes in common with my brother. I share a lot of genes in common with my parents. I share a lot of genes in common with my future children, if they ever exist. So as long as at least some of them continue to exist, it's not as important that my individual genes, that the genes that are in my body are propagated, so long as they're propagated somewhere. And that's an effective means of gene propagation. We see it in bees. Is there singing in the background?
Yeah. Yep, there is.
So what you
I'm in an office, but someone's singing outside.
It's rather loud.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear it. Well, I can hang up if I need to.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is all to say, the important thing. And you can actually read this, and this is one of Richard Dawkins, one of the things that he's quite famous for. He wrote this book called The Selfish Gene, which is about how it's about how evolution doesn't select for individual survival, it selects for gene survival. And once you understand that it's about genes surviving, then self-sacrificial behavior is just not so unexpected, because self-sacrificial behavior can lead to a higher rate of gene survival than individual survival would.
Yeah, I probably am not educated enough to talk about that then, because that doesn't really make sense to me how we've become a social species to begin with. Like,
well, social species are more effective at survival, at passing on their genes, than non-social species are, at least for some organisms. Depends on the environment, of course.
Yes, but the motivation to preserve genes versus yourself to begin with.
Why would you think that you'd be more motivated to preserve yourself rather than your genes?
I would say probably from experience. That seems to be
right. But that's not like what, like, evolution doesn't care about your experience. The point is that
no, but I'm saying the experience and seeing motivations from other people around.
But you also have experience of people. You also have experience or knowledge of people who do self-sacrifice. So, like, it's clearly not the like individual preservation is clearly not the only motivating factor. And in fact, if you understand that most of the time people are interested in preserving themselves, but sometimes people do self-sacrifice for, like, you know, their family members or their comrades or whatever, that's actually best explained by gene preservation rather than by individual preservation.
Okay, and I'm assuming you would say that's on a subconscious level.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of human psychology.
And what about sacrifices that are not necessarily done for things or people or animals that have any of your genes?
Well, I mean, once you have a psychology that is that has a propensity to do self-sacrifice, because self-sacrifice in the past basically meant preserving your family or preserving your community. Once you have that psychology is no longer connected necessarily to its original cause, the reason why it originally arose to begin with. So once you have that psychology where there's just a tendency for humans in stressful environments to sacrifice themselves for things that they care about, they'll just do it. It doesn't have to be evolutionary beneficial anymore.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's the last question I had, so I won't waste your time. Appreciate you talking to me.
Well, thanks for being here, Carl. Now, unfortunately for y'all, that was the last guest. We'll read some super chats and then we'll talk about some stuff and then we'll call it a day. So from JSS Tiger, with the $5, the Exodus was supposedly both around 1440 BC, 480 years before Solomon's Temple, and after construction of the city of Pi-Ramses, after 1292 BC. Yeah, like, the Exodus probably didn't happen, right? Like, it's a story. It's like a nation-building story to give some background to the ancient Hebrews, some unification there. Like, that's just what it is. It doesn't have to be real for it to be meaningful. Not a single crash out today. You're right. We didn't get a single crash out today, which is crazy. Now, before I go, one, I will let down my hair because we did reach 100,000 likes on TikTok. Hold on. My hair feels weird today. There we go. Second thing, if you haven't already, if you're 18 years or older, make sure that you go join the Discord server. You can type in discord.gg/drblitz. It's pretty easy to type in, pretty easy to find. And you can join the Discord server and you can talk cross-platform that way between TikTok and YouTube. You can also get announcements about when I'm live streaming, when I post videos, when I'm in other people's live streams or other people's videos. Absolutely, you can go join and get all those announcements and talk with like-minded people. Second thing is, we got a lot of gifted memberships today, but consider becoming a member of your own free volition. It's like $4 or $5 a month. It helps support me, helps encourage me to keep doing this, helps me hope that one day I will be able to reliably do this and not just treat it as like a side gig, right? And also then you get access to the debate notes, you get access to some emojis, you get my eternal gratitude. It's only $4 or $5 a month for all that, so consider it. Now we do have one last Cash App. This is from Grimlock with the $10 to promote more waterboarding, so bear in mind. Anyway, we will be live again tomorrow with a different topic. So I will see you guys then. Until then, go enjoy the Discord server and have a good rest of your day.